Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live today from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
Got a little bit of breaking news I just would want to pass on, that the Predators have struck a deal with News Channel 5 where there are going to be 3 games that are going to be simulcast, the FanDuel Sports Network thing that like half the people don't have a subscription to. November 30th at Minnesota, 7 o'clock, News Channel 5 will have that game. December 14th at Colorado, News Channel 5 will have that game at 8 o'clock. And December 27th, right after Christmas, at St. Louis, 7 o'clock, News Channel 5 will have that game. So there'll be 3 Predators games that will be on News Channel 5, which is interesting. I'm not sure I totally understand the why behind it, but maybe they don't really want to know from me. So, again, I got thoughts on it. We'll get into all that here on the program. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, but I want to start on this. So yesterday somebody said, I can't remember if it was Twitter, the text line, the YouTube chat. I mean, whichever way there is to contact the program, somebody said, Jared, are you going to preview the Texan game on Sunday? And I'm like, the Texan game on Sunday? First of all, it's Tuesday. And the Texans, even when the Titans are good, the Texans are not what we consider a 4-day team. But the short answer is no. We are not going to preview the Texan game. The long answer is, if the Titans were good and the Texans were good, which, Ian, I don't really know if the Texans are good or not, but they're certainly better than the Titans.
They're not bad. That's for sure.
Right. So if, again, if Houston was first and you were right there with them, and absolutely, we'd be talking about the Texans. Again, I'm not sure the Texans are a 4-day team. The Dallas Cowboys, when they're good, it's a 4-day team. If you were playing Kansas City or Buffalo, that's a 4-day team. Brady was always kind of, 4 days on that. Playoffs, it was really 5 days up previewing the game. It's funny, the Titans would play a playoff game on Saturday and win. And it was like, you get on the air Monday, you want to recap the game, and everybody's done talking about recapping the game. Everybody wants to talk about the next game. But unfortunately, we don't live in those times right now. The Titans aren't good. So breaking down a meaningless game that the Titans aren't going to win, and even if they did, it wouldn't make any difference, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But the only reason that I think somebody in this position would talk about the Texan game, or anything else for that matter, is to waste time. I say this all the time. We have 4 hours to fill every day. It doesn't matter if it's June 17th and there's nothing going on, or if it's the day that they fire Mike Vrabel. 4 hours every day. It's the same. Again, I hear all these conversations that are being had on the radio across the spectrum. Should the Titans re-sign Nick Westbrook-Akine? Let's have a big discussion on that. I even heard our midday show today, and I think they do a very good job, and the metrics indicate that they do an excellent job. But I heard them today talking about some guy at CBS says the Titans should sign Aaron Rodgers. And again, not that talking about that stuff on a day-to-day basis is beneath me, because it is not, but I don't think it matters. I think it's all just a waste of time. Even the talks about what to do with Will Levis. Because to me, there's only really one question that matters when it comes to the Titans. And the one question is, will Amy Adam Strunk make changes in the front office, or is she not? And some people will say, Jared, you talk about that every day. You talk about Rand Carthon this, Chad Brinker that. You're right. Because again, that's what I think matters right now, is where is the future of this organization headed? How does the owner feel right now about where this team is? Because if Amy Adam Strunk were to come out today, again, she came out last year, albeit not on the record, But she came out last year and they said Mike Vrabel wasn't going anywhere. So I'm not sure that their word holds a lot of weight at this point. They said Mike Mularkey was the coach going forward after the Kansas City playoff win, giving the implication that he would be the coach next season. And then they fired him 6 days later. So again, even if Amy were to hold a press conference today and say, this is the direction we're going, it's hard to believe that that is actually the direction that she would end up going, for whatever that's worth. But if she were to come out and say, hey, I'm not making any changes, period, no matter what, then I would tell you it's all same song, different dance. Everybody has a different opinion as to what the Titans should do. Everybody does. But there are really three options here. And everybody kind of falls into one category of this or another. The three options for the franchise are as follows. Number one, blow it up. Clean house, start over. I'm sorry, Brian Callahan, you got 1 year. It's probably not your fault, but it's just time to start over. As many of you know, I reside in that category. Number two, Rand is on the hot seat next year. If they don't win next year, blow it up. Rand's out. Callahan's out. Brinker, whatever he does is out, and start over. And I've even heard some of the people in the Rand Club that have said, hey, if this is this bad next year, go ahead and make your changes. And then the third, and we don't hear this very often because people aren't very patient when it comes to the National Football League, are things like, give them at least 3 more years to clean up John Robinson's mess. Again, I don't think anybody gets 5 years in the NFL to prove that they can win a game. But there are some people that think that. Well, they need more draft classes and they need, okay, I got it. So again, the three possibilities here, the three lines of thinking are blow it up, everybody's on the hot seat next year, or give them time, suck it up, blame Vrabel, blame Robinson. And I don't know which route Amy wants to go. Once I know what Amy wants to do or which way Amy is going to go, then I can give you an assessment of where the franchise is and where we can go from there. Again, when it comes to Rand enters next year on the hot seat, Callahan enters next year on the hot seat, and Amy demands they win. What was the headline in the Tennessean before the 1999 year, the year that they went to the Super Bowl? Playoffs or pink slips for Floyd Reese and Jeff Fisher. Why did they write it? Because Bud Adams said it. So if Amy comes out and says, like, you know, hey, I'm keeping Rand and I'm keeping Callahan, but next year we better get results. Now all of a sudden we're going to have a different conversation about where the franchise should go. All you people over there that want Shedeur Sanders, I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, if I was in their shoes, I wouldn't do it. Because I got to win next year. The 2026 second round pick in order to get Sam Darnold off the tag, because I may not make that pick anyways. If Amy comes out and says, hey, I'm blowing it all up, then again, I think the conversation shifts away from people that want to talk about, should they re-sign Nick Westbrook-Akine? But the conversation shifts away from that wasting time to, okay, well, now who is going to be the person that leads the football operation going forward? And I'm not talking about coach, but I'm talking about GM, president, whatever the title you want to give them. And then we talk about coach and how you want to build the team and what's in place to build and all those kind of things. And if Amy were to come out and Amy were to say, the state of our franchise was not in good enough shape for us to be able to fix this in 1 year. And fans, this is going to take multiple years for us to be successful. Again, the exact opposite of what she said at the end of last year when she said fans were going to be good sooner rather than later. But if that was the case, now you could draft Shedeur Sanders. Now you could think about, okay, hey, it's going to be a long process here. Trade down, add picks for next year, take a tackle, put Levis out there, or sign Daniel Jones as a bridge quarterback. And see, you see what I'm saying? So I don't know which of those routes Amy's going to choose. But again, everything else that you could possibly talk about when it comes to the Titans, everything else is just a waste of time. None of that matters. Should they re-sign Nick Westbrook-Akine? Boy, I'll tell you, that gets you on the Super Bowl Express. What about bringing in Johnny Joe to play right tackle this week? Yeah, that'll stop Daniil Hunter. That'll show him. What do we think about Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT?
What do we think about PT going up against Will Anderson Jr. this week? That's the stuff you guys want to talk about, get excited about? Again, to me, I remember when the Titans used to be good. I remember being on the radio and how much fun it was. In every single game, we would be talking about Sunday's game against the Texans right now. If this team was good, to a certain extent, we wouldn't be breaking down the Texans, but we'd be talking about the game. We'd be talking about, are they contenders or pretenders? How do they stack up with Buffalo and Kansas City and Baltimore and those teams? But we're not, because they stink. And so, again, everything else that I hear, and I'm not criticizing other hosts. It's going to sound that way, but I'm not. But it's all just a waste of time. What matters is what direction Amy plans on taking this franchise. And until we know any of that, I mean, again, we can speculate on that, which matters, or we could just talk about whether or not James Lynch needs more reps on the defensive line. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. That's how we're starting today, 615-737-1025. I talked to a former NFL general manager. We were talking about the state of the Titans. And I was stunned by something I heard. And this is a former general manager who I don't think is looking to get back in and be the GM. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game.
We visited with Brian Callahan. Archie can sense his frustration. He said he knows his players are frustrated. This is social media generation. They hear all the noise. Brian Callahan told us, even my daughter came home one day last week and said, Daddy, one of the other kids said you're going to get fired. So he had to sit his daughter down and tell her basically what he tells his son, I should say, said that. And so, it's all the things that these coaches and players have to deal with. First-time head coach doing it.
I mean, that bad social media talking about Brian Callahan being fired and hurting his kids' feelings. Well, again, he signed up for Will Levis. He signed up for Ran Carthon. He signed up for Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT.
He signed up for PT. I hate to say it, but it is what it is. So I talked to a former NFL general manager, and we were talking about the Titans. And the NFL former general manager said to me that he sees the Raiders as the only team in the NFL with a one-and-done head coach, that being Antonio Pierce. And the former NFL general manager followed up with me and said, in reference to Brian Callahan, quote, "No way I'd let him go." I said, what? Really? No way you'd let Brian Callahan go. Now, again, I don't think this guy is looking to get back in. And if he was looking to get back in, he probably would go on record and say something like, the Titans have a hell of a coach in Brian Callahan. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But he didn't. He just was, again, telling me, he's like, there is no way I would let Brian Callahan go. And I was shocked by that. And I'll tell you why. Because in my experience, every general manager wants to hire his own coach. Now, maybe there are some certain instances where, like Eric DeCosta inherited the job from Ozzie Newsome in Baltimore, and like Eric DeCosta knows John Harbaugh's not going anywhere. But other than that, Pittsburgh, for the most part, the general manager wants to hire his own coach. And I've seen it so many times. I've been on the radio. This is my 10th football season here at 102.5 The Game. In fact, I think me and Ian should wear patches every day on our shirt celebrating the 10th season of us doing this. But this is my 10th year. And I have seen so many GM coach issues over the years where the GM comes in and he says things like, well, I'm evaluating the coach, but we'll take a look. Fired. John Robinson wanted to hire his own coach. I mean, if you remember that, he took the job. And everybody knew Amy Adam Strunk wanted Mike Mularkey. He was the interim coach. John Robinson had never worked with Mike Mularkey before. I don't even know if John Robinson had ever met Mike Mularkey before. But Amy wanted Mike Mularkey to be the coach. And what did John Robinson say? I can do that. I actually thought it was a perfect marriage for that first year between Mularkey and Robinson. I was like, wow, these guys, they have an understanding of what they want to build, and they turned this thing around from the worst team in the NFL. In the second year, they made the playoffs and won a playoff game. And John Robinson still fired Mike Mularkey because he wanted his own coach. Ran Carthon. Whatever you want to make of what went down between him and Vrabel, my understanding is that they didn't hate each other and there wasn't any open animosity, but it was kind of like Vrabel did his own thing, Rand did his own thing, and ultimately they just didn't see eye to eye. But regardless of however you want to characterize it, between Carthon and Vrabel, whatever went down, Ran Carthon supposedly got to pick his own coach. Barry Trotz takes over the job as general manager of the Predators. John Hines goes on a heater at the end of the 2022-2023 season. And everybody just assumed John Hines would be back. I remember Paul Scorbina asked Trotz at the end of the year press conference. He goes, so, Hines is coming back, right? Hines sitting right next to Trotz. Trotz like, yeah, I don't know. We'll have to evaluate. It'll be a process. Gone. And again, I was for that move. every GM, I thought, wants to hire their own coach. So when I hear a former general manager tell me, and again, this is someone who I don't think wants the job. Again, if you want the job, you don't tell me off the record or, behind the scenes. You don't tell me, hey, man, I wouldn't fire Callahan. You come on the show and say, I would not fire Callahan. He's a great coach. He is, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, hire me, Amy. But that's not what he's doing. And he's saying he wouldn't do it, which kind of takes me down this weird path when it comes to Brian Callahan, because I am not a huge supporter of, quote unquote, firing Brian Callahan in an isolated move. But I also understand how the league works. And I don't believe in the guys that are running the personnel department and technically overseeing the coaches. So the way I view it is, if I'm bringing in a new general manager, and again, I use the term general manager as the guy in charge of football. Forget about the titling and everything. Again, the guy in charge of football. If I'm bringing a new guy in to run football, he's probably going to want his own coach. And what's going to happen is you now have two choices. You can either find the best general manager, period, which may involve getting rid of Brian Callahan, or you can find the best general manager willing to work with Brian Callahan. And I want the best general manager. So I view Brian Callahan's job status this season as collateral damage. That if Amy is smart enough and she blows it up in the front office, she's ultimately most likely going to have to be willing to can Callahan, because the best general manager might most likely want his own coach. But then I hear this, no way I'd fire Callahan. And I'm like, could that be something? But then you have to ask yourself, do you want to hire a new general manager with the idea that you want that general manager to work with Brian Callahan? Or do you just want, a clean start? Because there will be guys lined up to work for this team that will say they can work with Brian Callahan. And probably a third of those guys will actually want to work with Brian Callahan, but that exists. But there are going to be some guys that say, hey, look, I hear what you're saying, but most general managers only get one shot at this. And if I get one shot at this, I want to pick my coach. And now you're turning off some guys that might be the best general managers to come in here and rebuild the team. But I was surprised. Again, I thought most of these general managers, just the way the power structure in sports, the insecurity, the job security, the whatever you want to call it, the foundation, just always kind of felt like these general managers are trained to want their own coaches. And I get it. If you dream of being a program director at a radio station, you don't want to have the owner pick the hosts. You want to pick the hosts. So I get it. But again, maybe there is a sentiment. Maybe Brian Callahan, with all his stops around the league, has earned some respect, that some of these guys say, no, he's a good coach. It's just everything over there is all screwed up, and I can fix it. So just some food for thought. Again, I was surprised. Former NFL GM says, hey, again, the quote I got was, no way I'd let him go, which I was pretty surprised by. 615-737-1025 will hit your phones. Plus, what I think is most likely, Paul Koharski threw this out there this morning on Robbie and Rex Road, and I believe that this is the single most likely thing to happen at the end of the year. We'll touch on that next here on Stillman and Company. By the way, we will be giving away Jelly Roll tickets later tonight later today on the program. Jelly Roll will be at Bridgestone Arena on Tuesday, November 26th. And the contest is supplied by Chiba Hut Subs, serving up dank food and chill vibes. Now open in Donaldson. Listen for that. Speak of Jelly Roll, I went to the BMG CMA party last night. Very swank. Very exciting. Very exciting time. CMA night tonight. Very, very exciting time. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan tonight for Vandy women's basketball. The Commodores will be at Memorial Gym. Take you on a Hampton. Tip-off is set for 6:30. Pregame at 6:15. Jake will have the coverage on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com.
Again, who's advising Amy about who to hire? Burke? I mean, Burke's a fine businessman. He's not a football person. So who's the football person that's advising her? You know, her friend in Detroit.
Your buddy Chad Brinker?
Well, if he's still here, he's the person. probably.
Fire Rand and then Chad hires. That'd be quite a turn of
Fire Rand,
Et
Chad
tu, Brute. Et tu, Brinke. Stab him in the back.
If you fire Rand and keep Chad, Chad's probably doing the job.
Probably
Could
so.
be.
Yeah, could be.
But unless he is more like a Steve Underwood figure here, and then he's hiring the GM.
Figure is Burke.
Yeah, but more of a
well, he's the
more of
football Underwood. He's already the football Underwood. It's the personnel question, but he likes personnel.
There you go. That was PK this morning on the morning show. And I thought PK hit on exactly what's going to happen, which is, I believe at the end of the year, Amy Adam Strunk is, and I have no sourcing on this, nothing. But remember, who read the tea leaves on Mike Vrabel? Who was the one when on Thanksgiving, Diana Rossini reported Vrabel ain't going anywhere? And I said, yeah. But I know the Titans. So what I think is the most likely scenario around here is exactly what Paul just said. And quite frankly, I wish Joe would have shut up in that clip because, again, he's trying to make jokes about Chad Brinker. And I'm like, dude, this is actually like a pretty important discussion you guys are hitting on. And as soon as that cut ended, Robbie said something like, we could hire Joe Douglas. I'm like, oh, great. Like, this is that, like that, what they were talking about is a legitimate discussion that should be had that I think is what I think is the most likely thing to happen around here. If I had to tell you what I think is most likely, it's exactly that. At the end of the year, Amy Adam Strunk fires Rand Carthon as the sacrificial lamb, that the results just weren't good enough, and Chad Brinker is going to be in charge of football operations, and Brian Callahan is going to be the head coach. That's what I think is going to happen. And yet, can I ask a serious question when it comes to putting Brinker in there to run the team? Why? Like, what's the justification here? What's the resume piece here that says Chad Brinker can save the Titans? Like, what has Chad Brinker ever done? He's been here for 2 years now in some capacity. Last year was as Rand's lieutenant, and now it's his, I don't know what the exact title is, but it kind of feels like Rand's babysitter. So what in those 2 years has Chad Brinker been a part of that would give you any hope that this is the guy to save the Titans? Other than going on a podcast and sounding like a complete doofus, which reminds me of one of my favorite cuts from his Titans official podcast at the Senior Bowl. Although, again, Rand's in charge of personnel, but Chad's the one scouting at the Senior Bowl for whatever that sense that makes. And this nugget came from Chad Brinker.
I'm extremely grateful and appreciative. Miss Amy is, she is sweet. She's kind. She's fair and tough. And she loves her Tennessee Titans. There's no doubt about it. She loves this organization. She loves these fans, and she wants to get this thing right. And I'm just grateful that she put me in this position to try to help get the organization moving in the right direction and push us into the future.
Miss Amy is sweet. I mean, I remember when I heard that, and I was like, ugh, and I cut it. And I remember Caroline's reaction to hearing that. She was like, that's what you say about your Nana, not your boss. And so I always love stuff like that. And then there's all the other Brinker cuts we've played that we laugh at. You know, his job is to service the head coach, or, you know, the AI cancer model or whatever. But what is it about Chad Brinker? Like, how is Chad Brinker not a co-conspirator to what has happened around here? With the Vrabel stuff and the team going into the absolute tank and drafting Will Levis, who stinks, and a top 100 pick on a running back and a guard who sucks and a DT that doesn't hit the quarterback. I mean, how is he not culpable? L'Jarius Sneed's knees and now quad, and how is he not a little culpable here? And let me just say this. If I was Brinker and this was a real possibility, and again, I think it's the minus money favorite. If I was Brinker and this was a real possibility, I'd be leaking to my buddy PK things like, well, Chad Brinker didn't want to go into this year with Nicholas Petit-Frere at right tackle. Chad Brinker told Rand Carthon he thought they should have traded out a 38 instead of taking Tavondre Sweat. Chad Brinker thought that they should have hired an experienced special teams coach, but again, he was kind of overseeing. He wasn't, in charge or whatever it is. But then again, Diana Rossini says he is in charge, so who knows? Who knows? Miss Amy is sweet. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Cody says, I made sure to give my tickets on Sunday to Vikings fans because Amy Adam Strunk deserves to be embarrassed for how she's run this team into the ground over the last 3 years. Again, I don't know if you guys saw this in The Athletic, but there was a report that Woody Johnson called in Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh and the DC and the special teams coach and Nathaniel Hackett. And after, when they were 2-2 after 4 games and just berated everybody and then said, I think we should bench Aaron Rodgers for Tyrod Taylor. And that they had to talk him off this. Whoa, hold on. We're not doing that. Chill out. But again, it's just another example of how Woody Johnson of the Jets, and look, I wouldn't have kept Joe Douglas, and I think Saleh's a dope, but it's just another example of how Woody Johnson's a moron. Woody Johnson's a terrible owner. The Jets never win for a reason, and it's because he's a dope. The Giants are going with Tommy DeVito at quarterback because they're stupid too. These teams that consistently never get it right. And the Titans had actually done a pretty nice job of starting to get things right. Robinson, when he was general manager, you may not like this, but he did win 61% of his games. He did make the playoffs 4 times. He was in first place when he got fired. And so when Amy fired John Robinson, I knew there was something there. I knew it was more than just, Amy was upset about the way that things have been trending, and she just decided right then and there to do it, and you got to respect that. And when I found out, again, when people were saying it wasn't that, I thought, oh, God. I said, you're the Jets, you're the Browns, you're the Jags, you're the Raiders, you're the Commanders at the time with Dan Snyder, the dumb teams. And every single thing that has happened since that day, every single thing is why you sit with them and not with the good teams where you used to sit. And the conversations that we used to have about Cincinnati, Baltimore, Buffalo, Kansas City, and you. Brady and the Patriots in the playoffs, and you. One texter says, what makes you think they'll even have defined roles if Fran gets fired? Well, somebody has to be in charge of the football operation. So, at some point they have to say, hey, Callahan's going to be the head coach if they do this, which, again, I think is the minus money favorite for what happens at the end of the year. Rand gets fired. Chad becomes the president of football operations with roster control. Callahan's a coach. Callahan will have his job. And then, again, Brinker will be the one that does the press conferences and everything else. Who is this? 615-737-1025. Chris Sanders will join us next here on the program. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game. Tune into 102.5 and 106.3 The Game this Saturday at 11 a.m. for our college football game of the week. And it's a biggie. Indiana versus the Ohio State University, presented by Twin Peaks. Take your tailgate to Twin Peaks for home of 29-degree drafts and wall-to-wall sports. And this Sunday, I will be with Chris Sanders and Derek Mason at Twin Peaks in Madison for the award-winning pregame show, 9:30 to 11:30. And the award-winning pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment, Sundeck Nashville, Sloan's Motorcycle ATV, and award-winning Blue Note Juke Joint and Blue Note Crossroads Bourbon. Chris Sanders joins us now on the program, presented by Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. So, Chris, let's start with the award-winning pregame show last week. I have said this time and time again. I want your opinion.
Sure.
We saw something I'm not sure we've ever seen before. Just from our vantage point for the pregame show, the Viking fans on the rooftops, the Viking fans on Broadway, the Viking fans on the bridge. Chris, I think that was a message from the Titan fans that do have tickets, telling ownership they are unhappy with what they're looking at right now. What'd you make of it?
You know, it was hard because, you know, we noticed that, you know, we're at the rooftop. There were so many Vikings fans. And then we looked on the bridge and all you saw was purple. And as a former player, you know, it really, really kind of hurt your feelings because, you know, it kind of takes me back when we went to Memphis. I know that's not the same as here, but when we went to Memphis, when we had all Pittsburgh fans, that was disheartening because it felt like an away game. So I can understand how the players feel and going to a stadium when you see all purple and then all of a sudden I'm looking at it on TV and you hear the cheers for the Vikings. I mean, it just kind of breaks your heart that it was more Viking fans than Titans fans.
Chris, do you think that kind of message gets through to the owner as far as the GM, the coach, the direction of the franchise?
I mean, it's just tough because I don't think it's just a Titans thing. I just think that the teams that are doing bad, you know, the fans are not showing up. So it's not just a Titans thing. Oh, we're just not going to show up and let the other people have the tickets. I just think that you have a team that's 2-8 right now, and I think that, you know, it's tough for them to watch. I mean, it's tough for me to watch sometimes because I bleed Titans. I played there. I bled on the field. I did all those things. And it's just tough to see a whole bunch of Vikings fans. It's tough to see, you know, people not showing up to the game. It's tough to go to the YMCA. And before then, they were talking about how good the Titans were. And then all of a sudden, they talk about that they were trying to sell their tickets. I just think sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow.
Chris Sanders with us on the program. Chris, do you think Amy Adam Strunk should come out right now on record? You know, not this sources close to the Titans indicate, but should come out herself and tell the fans either, you know, I'm unhappy with where things are headed, or I am behind these guys 100% no matter what, and everybody's coming back.
I think that, you know, I agree with you 100%. I think that, you know, I'm not saying have a big old press conference. I'm just saying, you know, come out and sit down and let somebody interview her and let her ask, you know, the questions that a lot of people are asking. You know, I mean, there's a lot of things that a lot of decisions you got to make. I mean, I know she saw the stadium last week, you know, where it was all, you know, Vikings fans. So I just want to hear her, you know, and I have so much respect for Amy Adam Strunk. I love her. I love what she did for Floyd Reeves. But I want her to just lay a vision of where we're going. I mean, I know everybody says the same thing, you know, at the beginning of the season, but here's what I want from this organization. I just want it to be intentional. Be intentional about what you're going to say. Lay down the vision, lay down the game plan, lay down the identity of where we're going, and let's try to focus that. Right now, I just don't know. I don't want to hear a lot of talk, and I'm not saying that they're doing that. I don't want to hear a lot of talk. I just want to get this franchise back on course because I love my team.
Chris, I was thinking about this. You know, we've played the cuts from when Amy does speak, which is very rare.
Sure.
And it's usually, you know, in a very controlled setting. You know, this was with Mike Keith last year when she sat down and she said that Titan fans deserve better, that last season was unacceptable, and that they'll get it sooner rather than later. And this team has gone nowhere but backwards since then.
Right.
Do you think if you owned the team and you told the fans, hey, last year, 6 wins, that was unacceptable. I'm going to spend money. Granted, they did spend $230 million, but they're also, you know, 22nd or whatever, 26th or whatever in payroll. But, you know, I'm going to spend some money on this. We're going to give you a team to be proud of. And it's this bad. Like, if you own the team, would you feel like, okay, I got to reevaluate this? Or would you say, no, it was worse than we thought it was, and it's going to take longer, and fans be patient with these same guys?
You know, what I would do is when we talk about, you know, great leadership. And I think that Amy Adam Strunk is doing a pretty good job. But I would sit in the meeting room with all the coaches and say, okay, first I'll start with Rand Carthon and say, okay, Rand, what's the vision of our team? Where are we going? How are we going to do this? Who the players are we looking at? What are we going to do? Then I'll start with the head coach, and then I'll start with, different people in the organization and say, okay, what are we doing? Let's all just be on the same page and build this same roster out. Because if you look at last year, when she said all those things, we got to build up the roster, we got to do those things. I think she gave the keys to Rand Carthon, and Rand Carthon, answered them some questions that we need to be answered. Some of the questions that need to be answered was the defensive back situation. What do you do? They went and go get Sneed and Awuzie. They said we need a top flight wide receiver. They go get Calvert-Ridley. But the guys that you bring in, unfortunately, they get hurt. So what do you do? I mean, it's kind of hard to do something else where you're answering the questions, but the questions that are getting answered or the players that you put on the field, they get hurt. So it's a catch-22 to where she's going to have to answer those questions. I think she'll be a stand-up. Rand will be a stand-up guy, and Amy Adam Strunk will also be a stand-up person to do that.
They don't do it very often.
I mean. Let me ask you a question. Let me flip the script on you. Let me ask you. Okay, you're Amy Adam Strunk, and you got this situation that's going on with all these players, and the Vikings, showed up in the stadium. What would you say if you had a meeting with all the coaches in there?
If I sat there with all the coaches, I would ask them.
Coaches and the whole staff. What would you say?
Again, I do think there are coaching questions to be asked, but my thing would be more on personnel. Like, who's to blame for right tackle? Like, how did Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker not know that PT did not have the guts, to be a real lineman in the NFL when they were here last year? That's what I want to know.
That's a fair question. I mean,
what I want to know from Brian Callahan is, if you could do this over again, like if you woke up and it was January 19th or whatever day he was hired, it's January 19th over again, what would you do differently? And I'd want to know what his answer was on that. And then when it comes to Chad Brinker, I'd say, so what the hell are these analytics getting us that you keep bragging about?
Right.
How's this helping us win football games?
Yeah.
That's what I'd ask.
And that's fair, but I think too, if I was meeting with this organization, I was meeting with the quarterback. I mean, not the quarterback, the leader of this team. I would lay a blank piece of paper on the desk and say, where are we going? What's our vision? What's our destiny? What's our identity of where we're going? And hire people that are on the same page. That's all you can do, because you look at this team right now. We went and got some good name players. When I say that respectful, some good name players. Sneed was a lockdown corner. Awuzie was good for the Cincinnati Bengals. Those guys with good names. But when you bring them in and they get hurt, your star players are not playing, and it makes your team that's really, really dismal. I understand with the right tackle situation, 1,000%, because I say this term all the time. If you play the same record, you're going to hear the same song. And for 4 years, we kept hearing the same song. So if I'm Rand Carthon, if I'm, Brian Callahan, I'm going to tear up that record and put something different on there and say, okay, you know what? I'm making sure this draft I get a right tackle. I'm making sure that I get playmakers and impact players to turn the situation around. That's all you can do.
Chris Sanders with us. Last one for you. Did you look at Sunday as a moral victory for the Titans?
I say it was a moral victory for Will Levis. And the reason why I say it's a moral victory for Will Levis is because he played a good, clean game. I know he threw an interception. I know he was on the ball long. But a moral victory, not just for the team, because I know overall, collectively, these guys want to win ball games. I mean, I was looking at, Arden Key on the field. I was looking at Jeffrey Simmons. These guys are fighting. But a moral victory for Will Levis, because he's been getting crucified. He's been getting said he's this, he's that. And he comes out and throws a 98-yard bomb to NWI. So I think that's a win-win for Will Levis. I'm not 100% sold on him yet, but it's a win-win for Will Levis, not a moral victory for the team.
Chris Sanders, as always, on our program presented by Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Chris, we will see you on Sunday.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, brother. Bye-bye.
Yep, Chris Sanders joining us as always. And be sure to tune into 94.9 The Fan this Saturday for Vandy football, presented by Princess Hot Chicken. The Commodores take on LSU beginning at 5 o'clock with the pregame, kickoff at 6, and coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at thegamenashville.com. And coming up next, I tried to push back, try every year, and no matter what I say, Nobody listens. They take the bait every single time. That's next. Stillman and Company on 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the busy Beat Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So there's something that I've been pushing back on for years and years and years and years. And again, I don't think I'm the voice of everybody. Like, I don't think I speak for everybody. I don't think that I am influential enough to be able to tell people the truth and everybody listen to it. And I understand my place in society. But this totally burns my ass every single year because I find it to be so fraudulent. And that is the weekly college football rankings that come out for the college football playoff every single year. Ian, did you watch the ranking show last night, or did you catch the rankings, or did you hear the outrage surrounding the rankings and everything else?
A little.
I push back on this every year. I remember the first year these rankings came out, 2014, the first year of the college football playoff and the midseason rankings and the ranking shows on ESPN. And I was doing radio in a college market in Louisville, Kentucky. And I remember that first ranking that had Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and LSU all in the top 4. And I remember when that first ranking came out, and I was, just talk about speechless. Can you believe we talked up and down about the college rankings? Well, but the committee thinks this, and the committee thinks that, and the committee said this, and they're telling us with that, and they're this. We try to read every single tea leaf of those 25 teams like we were Talmudic scholars. And yet at the same time, at the very, very end, the last rankings before the final rankings that determine the playoff had Baylor at 4, TCU at 5, and Ohio State at 6. And the question was going to be, which one of those 3 teams was going to make the playoff? And guess what? All of them won. And it ended up being Ohio State at 6. They just decided, they're number 4. Eyeball test. We decided. They lied. They told everybody it was about the conference championship. But they said, well, they played the extra data point, so let's put Ohio State in there. And from that moment on, I realized anybody who watches those ranking shows, anybody who takes any of this stuff seriously is being played. That's just the truth. These college football rankings, and people are outraged. Joe Rexrode wrote like an 8,000-word column about, can you believe what the committee said? People are like, well, the committee tells us that Indiana is going to be valued in BYU and SMU, and the committee's just ranking stuff so that they can have a show on ESPN who pays a fortune for the playoff. They can have a weekly Tuesday night show when nothing's going on in the football world. Think about this. Monday night football, Thursday night football, Saturday football college, Sunday NFL. They're busy with all of that. Tuesday, what's ESPN got to talk about? Wednesday, at least on Tuesday, they talk about Monday Night Football. On Wednesday, what's there to, let's make something up. And that's what these rankings are. Every week they come out. Everybody gets outraged. Every time. The committee is telling us that Indiana's going to play Ohio State on Saturday. We're going to find out if Indiana is actually any good or not when they play football on the field. Who cares what tea leaves the committee is showing us with their rankings? Most of these things get decided on the field anyways. But last year it came down to 2 teams, Florida State and Alabama. And I can't tell you what message the committee was giving us before they decided to put Alabama ahead of Florida State at the end. What were the messages? What were the discussions? What were the arguments? This entire thing is complete and total mindless drivel. That's what this is. It's an ESPN concoction to give their programming something for people to get upset about or defensive of. It's perfect fodder for the Paul Feinbaum show. And yet, no matter how many years we go through this, where on some random Tuesday night in October or November, college football fans just get flummoxed by the College Football Playoff Committee, only for that to be forgotten 5 minutes later. Every year, everybody else seems to fall into the same trap. Again, I don't know exactly how this is going to play out in the end, because this used to be complaining about the difference between 4 and 5, and now it's going to be complaining about the difference between 12 and 13. And it's like, if you can't be for sure in the top 12, then are you really championship caliber anyway? But again, this idea that anything the committee told you yesterday is going to have any bearing on the actual playoff is totally false. There are numerous occasions where the committee one week tells you, well, we think this. And then the next week they tell you, well, instead this week we think that. Every single year, I've heard different reasons for a team to make it to the playoff over another team. Again, I brought up the 2014 Ohio State. They won the national title that year, but they really only got in my opinion, because they beat Wisconsin by 70, and they said, well, you know what? Let's just go ahead and put Ohio State in. But we were told Ohio State got in over Baylor and TCU because Ohio State had won a conference championship, and that mattered to them. Well, Florida State won a conference championship last year. Didn't matter to them last year. I mean, whatever. Alabama made it in 2017. They didn't win the conference championship that year. So, again, I keep seeing these things where, like, everyone gets outraged and everyone's, dialing up strength of schedule, and let's bring Paul Feinbaum on First Take to yell about it. And it's like, they're playing you. None of this matters. Like, none of it matters. They'll change their mind in the last week anyways to get in who they think belongs, which seems to almost always correspond. And I'm not a tinfoil hat guy when it comes to this, but it seems to almost always correspond with who's a better TV draw. Who's a better TV draw? Ohio State, Baylor, or TCU? Oh, it's Ohio State. Who's a better TV draw? Florida State with no quarterback or Nick Saban? Texas hasn't played anybody all year, but boy, they're right up there at the top. But again, I find this weekly arguing about the rankings just a complete and total waste of time. And I feel like the people that do the arguing, I feel like they're smarter, or smart enough at least to be able to know, like, yeah, they're doing this so that, on our shows, people get worked up, and, the little college fan base that we left out next week, they'll spend all week watching ESPN because Greg McElroy said. And yet, here we are. Just same old mindless dribble. The Vols got left out. How dare the committee put Indiana there? And again, 2 weeks from now, you'll forget what you were even mad about when it came to these rankings. 615-737-1025 is our phone number here on the program, here on Stillman and Company. And coming up next, Vol fans are upset. Tennessee's out. Again, they can change their mind next week, but Tennessee fans are mad. Guys, chill out. The Vols will be in the playoff, and I'll tell you why. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
Who has the biggest right to be mad today? Who has the biggest gripe on this morning?
It's the Georgia Bulldogs, because when you showed that graphic, Greeny, you saw Georgia's opponents all over the place, including a Texas, the number 3 team in the country. They only beat Texas in Texas, and you look at they played Alabama. At Alabama, they lost at Ole Miss, and they beat Tennessee. When you look at everyone else, Indiana doesn't have a ranked team. They'll get one this weekend. Penn State has lost to one. Every time I get on here every Wednesday morning, Greeny, I say to myself, calm down. Don't be an angry guy. Get off your lawn. But this committee is not serious. There are football coaches on this committee, and there's no way those football coaches can tell me or anyone else with a straight face that they really think Indiana, Penn State, Miami, schools like that are better than Georgia. It's not possible.
Well, I mean, we did watch Georgia get their ass kicked a week ago, so there is that. But Paul Feinbaum, again, the outrage at the committee, who can then just change their mind next week anyways. That's how this works. Oh, yeah, we'll just change their mind next week. They were originally 7th, now they're 4th. That's what we decided. So, again, I think the whole rankings thing is stupid. I think it's designed for people who host shows like Caroline does. You know, Caroline's Yahoo show, they got to have something college football to talk. I guarantee they're talking rankings. Joe, who only does college football now at The Athletic, Joe wrote a whole long column about it. Feinbaum, I mean, I guarantee you every call today is going to be, Paul, I got to tell you, the committee, I'll tell you, Let's go to Steven, who's up next in Little Rock. Go ahead, Steven. It's all the same. So Tennessee fans are mad because Tennessee is 12th. But if the playoff were held today, they'd be out. The first team out. Guys, I'm just going to tell you right now, trying to read the tea leaves with how it is, Tennessee's going to make the playoff as long as they beat Vanderbilt. And again, give me that little asterisk right there. But as long as they beat Vanderbilt, Tennessee is going to make the playoff. They're going to beat UTEP, and they probably will beat Vanderbilt. Though I would argue that Vandy might be better than Arkansas, and they did lose to Arkansas.
Is there a guarantee or calling it I should be putting on here?
No. But I feel all but certain that a 2-loss Tennessee team where they win over Alabama is getting into the playoff. They're just not in the playoff today. Again, Indiana plays Ohio State on Saturday. I don't know what the line on the game is, and I don't know any of that. We'll watch it be played. I'm actually excited about a Big Ten game, which is very hard for me to do. Get excited about Big Ten football. But I am excited because I want to see, is this James Madison light in Indiana?
We got Ohio State minus 13.5 early line here.
See, exactly. Is Indiana Fugazi or not? We'll see on Saturday. If Ohio State beats crap out of them 41-3, then we'll know. And they'll fall in the rankings, and Tennessee will move up and all of that. And so when I look at the rest of the SEC and I look at the rest of the Big Ten and I look at the college football and the teams there are so many losses on these schedules that are ahead for these other teams. Texas plays Texas A&M. One of those teams has to lose. Georgia, Ole Miss, A&M, Texas, whoever ends up in the SEC championship, one of those teams is going to lose. And the one thing that I have learned, while nothing is definitive when it comes to the subjective college football playoff committee, and again, not only is nothing subjective, but it's also not certain because they changed the committees. The single most important factor over the last decade that we've had this is actually the same most important factor that the old BCS used to have, which was how many times have you lost? There are so many different metrics. And again, it's not a certainty because Florida State was undefeated last year and got left out. But those were pretty extenuating circumstances when you factor in the fact that Florida State was on its third-string quarterback and that Alabama was the team that they were playing, and Nick Saban represents a brand, and it's almost like, well, Saban's team must be good. But the single most important thing has always been, how many games have you lost? That's always been the most important thing. And Tennessee has 2 losses. And after all these other teams get all done with their losing, I highly doubt that there will be a 2-loss SEC team that gets left out of this college football playoff. They'll be fine as long as they beat Vanderbilt and do not pick up a 3rd loss or make it to the SEC championship game, which I don't think is very likely. So Tennessee is going to make the playoff. Don't get too worked up about what you saw yesterday. I know that's going to fall on deaf ears because, again, the whole point of these playoff rankings, the whole point of why they exist, are so Paul Feinbaum can go on TV and yell about it. That's why. So, again, I get it. Tennessee fans yesterday, how could they think Indiana's this good or bad, or how could they? Let's not kid ourselves. These games are going to get played. We'll probably have a pretty good idea. You'll be splitting hairs between 12 and 13. And again, like, even as the Vols are concerned, I think the Vols are going to make it. Even as the Vols are concerned, we know championship football. That ain't it. So I got to say, I think it's a little ridiculous that the Tennessee fans were so upset last night when that bracket dropped. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. One texter is very, very upset about this, saying, how can you say this about college football and the college football playoff rankings when NFL guys only talk about Lamar and Josh Allen versus Mahomes, only for the Chiefs to win their 3rd straight Super Bowl? How is this any different than Mike Greenberg going on ESPN every day and talking about how bad the Jets are for the last 15 years? Because, again, the Jets, this would be like if Woody Johnson, now he's so stupid this might be the case, but this would be like if Woody Johnson fired Joe Douglas yesterday to give Mike Greenberg something to talk about, and then changes his mind tomorrow. That's what these rankings are. These rankings are just nothing out of thin air. It's like a Mel Kiper mock draft. Mel Kiper's mock draft doesn't mean anything, but you bet your ass, when we do segments and I look at all the numbers, when we do segments, Mel Kiper Jr.'s latest mock draft is out. Who's he got the Titans taking? People care. I asked Jim Wyatt one time. Jim Wyatt does something, and I look at this all the time at the Titans website, and it's called Touring the Mocks. And it's it's an article that Jim writes at the Titans website during the offseason where Jim Wyatt goes through every mock draft. And there are about 9 billion mock drafts nowadays. So that's a lot of work on Jim's part. But he puts together a comprehensive list of who every single mock drafter has the Titans drafting. I asked Jim one day, I said, how well does that get read? Jim says it is one of the single most viewed things that he does. Because even though these mock drafts are stupid, that's all anybody cares about. It's like, oh, I got to see who they have being mocked to the Titans. I mean, I remember we did mock drafts last year. The Stillman and Company mock draft. And people got into it. That's what the college football playoff rankings are. It's not the same as having a discussion of whether or not Josh Allen is better than Mahomes because they played on Sunday and Josh Allen won, and maybe that means Buffalo could beat Kansas City in the playoffs, though Buffalo seems to always beat Kansas City in the regular season, never in the playoffs. But there is a humongous difference there. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. L'Jarius Sneed out again with this quad injury that apparently is as serious as Tommy John surgery, I guess. Why everybody thinks there's a chance, why everybody cares about this. There's a reason why. And again, Paul this morning was like, I don't know why everybody cares about L'Jarius Sneed's injury. There is a reason why Titan fans care about this. And we will get to that next. 615-737-1025. MTSU football. Be sure to tune in for MTSU football. MTSU football will be on Saturday. That's right, on 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville. The Blue Raiders take on New Mexico State. Kickoff at 1:30. The pregame begins at noon. MTSU football coverage on 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville is presented by Sloan's Motorcycle ATV.
Brownlee and Baker as fourth, fifth, when you started out. How much better might you be if you get back to blueprint with Cheeto and Sneed back at some point playing, fielding something close to the team you envisioned?
Yeah, that's the exciting part to me. I mean, I still, I think, L'Jarius is dealing with a legitimate injury. Cheeto had a legitimate injury, and hopefully get him back here soon and see what that looks like. And now you have real depth and real players, and you got 4 or 5 guys you feel like that can step in and play and either get you out of a game or two or play long stretch as well. And that part's exciting to me because I know what those other 2 guys are capable of and how well they've played in their past. And you get that level of play out of them with the type of players that have been developed between the other 3 guys playing right now. And you feel really, really good about where your secondary is at. That would be exciting.
Brian Callahan talking about, hey, Brownlee and Baker are doing pretty well, which Ian and I were even talking about during the break. 39 Baker, he's okay. He's not terrible. Neither, by the way, is 44 Mike Brown, kind of like him a little bit too. But there is a lot of interest in L'Jarius Sneed, and I don't know if you guys noticed there in that Brian Callahan cut, but Brian Callahan says, yeah, L'Jarius is out with an injury. It is a real injury, which, again, is kind of the same as Denard Wilson last week when he said L'Jarius Sneed is not a quitter, which, again, I think was in direct response to me, bringing up the fact that what is the deal with this quad injury? Brian Callahan did start his press conference today off by telling everybody L'Jarius Sneed will be out for Sunday's game, and this will make it 6 straight weeks. And I'm going to tell you why there's so much interest in L'Jarius Sneed's injury. And I'm going to tell you why the Titans are so defensive about L'Jarius Sneed's injury. I heard Paul this morning yelling at Robbie and Joe, saying, why do people care about L'Jarius Sneed's injury? And the reason why people care about L'Jarius Sneed's injury, forget about all the extracurricular BS. I'm just going to tell you the real reason. It's because L'Jarius Sneed picked the Titans for one reason: the money. The only reason he came here was for the money. And now that he has it, people are wondering if he really actually wants to come back. Well, Jared, that's not fair. And hate to break it to you, babe, the NFL ain't fair. L'Jarius Sneed actively chose to leave the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, his only desire in this was to get paid. You want to know how I know his only desire was to get paid? Because he went to the Titans. And when you choose to leave Kansas City for the Titans, clearly winning is not the most important issue to you. Travis Kelce, for instance, his entire contract is worth $35 million. Evan Ingram's is worth $41. Evan Ingram. Mahomes and Chris Jones are the only guys there that get paid the going rate. You're a good tackle? You better take a discount or you won't be a Chief. So L'Jarius Sneed got paid. And when L'Jarius Sneed got paid, the reason the Titans were the ones to pay him and nobody else wanted to was because there were all these injury question marks around Sneed. And granted, that was his knees. And this is supposedly a quad. But again, let's think about the injury. A helmet to the quad in the Indianapolis game, and he's now out 6 weeks, but no IR, no update, no practice. We were told again, he gets hit with a helmet in the Colts game, finishes the Colts game. In fact, he made the last tackle that the Titans made in the Colts game. He made it. He played 99% of the defensive snaps. So it wasn't bad enough to come out. And I understand adrenaline's a real thing. But Jack Gibbons probably had plenty of adrenaline too. Sometimes the bad injuries, it doesn't matter how much adrenaline you got. But so he was able to finish the game. They did an MRI of the quad. The MRI revealed that it was actually worse than they had anticipated. Totally understand. So what's that mean? 1 week, 2 weeks? Again, if they had done an MRI and it was, oh my God, look at how bad this injury is, he goes to IR, period. Chidobe Awuzie went to IR. Lloyd Cushenberry went to IR. Why would L'Jarius Sneed not go to IR? Kalen Kaler at ESPN wrote an article that teams that take out insurance premiums on players, when a guy goes to IR, can claim the money back. I have to assume they took out an insurance premium on L'Jarius Sneed. So again, this whole thing, it doesn't make any sense about 6 weeks, but no IR, and no, this is a serious injury. No practice? Again, when a guy tears his ACL and they say he's out for the year, I got it. I understand. When you tell me a guy got hit in the quad with a helmet and you don't know how long he's going to be out, but it just seems like the start of every week is, oh, yeah, no, he's not going to play this week. What about next week? We'll see. Next week comes. What about next week? Nah, not going to play. But I think he's getting close. Is he practicing? Nope. And not only that, L'Jarius Sneed talked to reporters last week, again, because I think that what we had said kind of was getting over there about this idea of, is L'Jarius Sneed faking it? Which, again, Chris Sanders was the one who said if they were 7-2 and not 2-7, he thinks Sneed would be out there. But again, Sneed, I guess, felt the need to talk to reporters. And listen to this little back and forth here in the locker room. You tell me if this sounds very convincing that L'Jarius Sneed is actually hurt.
Come back, or
just taking it day by day.
Day by day. Does this surprise you?
Unfortunately.
Does this surprise you how long it's been?
Yeah. Very surprising.
You disappointed?
Very disappointed.
How much of a difference could you be making if you're out there?
I'm not sure because I'm not out there.
When it first happened, it felt like kind of a day-to-day thing. I guess, how long did it take for you to get that MRI in and realize that it was going to be more extended than you originally thought?
I knew it was something,
Immediately you felt like it was something?
I immediately felt it was something. Was trying to stay, of course, but, things happen.
What has the process been like for you since you encountered that?
Been tough. Been hard. I want to be out there to help my brothers, my teammates, and it's been kind of challenging for me that I can't get out there. Coming to my first year into organization, trying to make a name for myself here, get respect here. It's been kind of challenging, frustrating.
What are you able to do right now?
Right now, I'm able to go to meetings, help the young guys who never been in a position to play as many plays as they play. I help them along the way throughout the week. Sit on my notes. I just try to slow the game down for them.
But you're not doing anything on the field at this point, running or
No,
I mean, again, you listen to this interview, and it's like he's testifying in front of a jury, and it's like, so when you coming back? Day to day. You gonna play next week? No. So then it's not day to day. Again, day to day is, I'm going to try to get out there for practice, see if it works. Instead, is L'Jarius Sneed ever going to play for the Titans again? He's getting close, Jared. Okay. So is he going to play this week? No. So what's the injury? It's day to day. But he's not going to play 6 days from now. Correct. I mean, when I listen to that interview where guys are asked questions like, so what was it like when you got the MRI and you saw the results? Did you know that it was worse than the... He's like, oh, no, I knew. So why didn't you come out of the Colts game? I mean, I was waiting to hear somebody in that say, objection, like his defense attorney or something. So if you want to know why Titan fans are sitting here and they keep wondering, and nobody's asking about Chidobe Awuzie and what's wrong with it, because we know what it is. It's a hamstring, and he plays a position where you run. Got it. Nobody's asking about Lloyd Cushenberry. But everybody's asking about Sneed. Because, again, we didn't see the injury happen. Sneed did not give, in my opinion, a convincing diagnosis. And because, again, the underlying thing with L'Jarius Sneed was, is he going to be healthy enough to be consistent on the Titans? And does he actually want to be here, or did he just want to get a check? And now that he's gotten his check, does he really not give a rat's ass? That's the issue. Again, he can say, again, when he was like, Yeah, the hardest part was, not being out there with my brothers. That doesn't sound very convincing either. So again, I don't know what the deal with Sneed is, and I'm not pretending to know. But I'm telling you the why people care and why people doubt when the coaching staff is wagging their finger saying, he is hurt. It's okay. He is hurt. It's because, again, the timeline doesn't seem to add up. His comments on it left a lot to be desired. And again, we all want to know if this guy that was so excited to leave the Chiefs to come here actually gives a rat's ass about playing football. 615-737-1025. Your phones are next. Stillman and Company on 1025 The Game. This week's Nationals Best Deals, Bavarian Beer House, Nashville's only authentic German beer hall, a place full of fun, food, music, and most importantly, beer. Enjoy traditional German beer, brats, giant pretzels, and more in their expansive beer hall and garden. Head to the GameNashville/deals now to get a $50 gift card for only $25 to Bavarian Beer House while supplies last. Again, L'Jarius Sneed has a quad injury. Last week, he said it was day-to-day. Since then, he has not practiced, and he has already been ruled out for the next game coming up this week against the Texans. So it doesn't sound very day-to-day to me. And again, Sneed does an interview, and it's like a tooth pulling, basically. It's like a trip to the dentist office. But every Titans coach, Denard Wilson, L'Jarius Sneed is not a quitter. Brian Callahan, this is a real injury. But they won't put him on IR. Let's go to your phones, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Let's go to T-Dog, who's up next and has been waiting patiently. What's up, T?
Jared. Man, last I called and you were kind of talking about that quad injury and how close it was to the knee. I thought we were under the same understanding, man. You are you're amazing. I already told you that. Bruh, you know he's not going to play any football. He's sitting to wait for a trade, man. He's checked out, and so soft tissue or whatever, they can't really test that. And so he's like, you know what? I'm not playing another down for this team. I'm ready to get out of here. You know that, Jared. Man, I'm so surprised. All right, thanks, man.
Yeah, so I don't have any proof of that. And again, Denard Wilson last week basically got up there and said that that's not the case. L'Jarius Sneed's not a quitter. He is legitimately injured. Ian, we got that. I know it's not good quality, but we got that Denard Wilson. Yeah, from last week. So again, you're saying like, hey, he don't want to be here. He got his money and now he's waiting for a trade. And here's what Denard Wilson said last week.
He is not a quitter. That's what I can tell you about the young man. He's trying to do everything he can to get out on the football field. And when he's healthy enough to get out on the football field, he'll play. There's no quit in him. He's a leader. He's a tough guy. He wants to be out there and fight with his teammates. And obviously right now he has an injury and he's not ready to play. And every day he's in a meeting room. Every day he asks questions. He's helping the young guys. He's all dialed in. He's 100% in with this organization and his defense.
So again, he's saying the opposite of what you're suggesting there. So, I mean, I can't say that because I don't know that. But that is what Titan fans, like, there is a big portion that's like, yeah, I wonder if this guy got paid. And now it's like, see ya. One text says, Jared, is it possible the Titans were the only team that wanted to trade for him? In a trade, the player has a lot less control on which team is going to trade for him. Steven also said L'Jarius Sneed was traded to the Titans. Again, I think his point being that L'Jarius Sneed didn't choose here. Yes, he did. Because even though L'Jarius Sneed didn't have a no-trade clause, given the fact that he had to sign an extension wherever he went, basically gave him a de facto no-trade clause, which is why the Titans and everybody else that was in the mix with Indianapolis they had to work out a contract with Sneed first, then they had to work out the compensation with Kansas City. So Sneed absolutely chose to be a Titan. Before you start telling me he got traded, it wasn't a free agent signing. Sneed was a part of that deal. One texter says, why are all the answers 1 or 2 word answers? Like, why even talk to the media at that point if you aren't going to properly address the situation? And so I actually agree with that. Like, why did L'Jarius Sneed feel the need to talk to the press only to sit there and be as opaque as possible when it came to what's up with this mysterious quad injury? It's like, so what's up with this mysterious quad injury? On the advice of my counsel, I have decided to not answer that question. It's like, you could just say, imagine if L'Jarius Sneed said, I took a hit to the quad in the third quarter. It was Michael Pittman. It was a running play, and the tight end was coming at me, and it was Pittman that tried to take me down, and he got his helmet right in my quad, and I had a hard time playing through it the rest of the game. Still probably should have not given up the bomb to Alec Pierce, but I got through the game. We did the MRI on Monday. We saw the results, And apparently it's a grade 4 bruise. And because of that, usually that's anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks. But I'm trying out in the training room, and right now we haven't been able to get to a point where I can transition to the field. How hard is it to say something like that? If that is the case, how hard is it? Let's go to Anthony, who's up next here on our program. Andrew, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to know, how much of this do you think that the coaching staff and others are trying to cover for the bad management of the front office? That's all I wanted to know. Do you think this is them trying to cover, or do you think it's there's a little bit more legitimacy to this? Thank you.
I think it's interesting. I think I'll give percentages here, right? So the first percentage I'll give you is I think there's a 50% chance that L'Jarius Sneed is legitimately hurt and that he's trying his hardest to come back and that he just cannot get that quad to a point to where he can go out there and go. And the second that they allow him to come back and get in there, then he'll get in there. I think that's probably 50%. Maybe that's a little high, but let's just go with 50%. I think there's a 25% chance that he's completely faking it and that he doesn't want to be here and that he hates that this team sucks because the only thing he knows is competing for the Super Bowl, and he took the check and now he's upset about it because he didn't think this team was going to suck that bad. And then I think 25% of it is it's not really the quad, it's really the knee, and the Titans want to lie about it. That's what I'll give you. And maybe I'll tweak those percentages a little bit, but something's not adding up. And again, I don't have any question about Cushenberry. Don't have any question about Tajay Spears, who's hurt again with a concussion. Don't have any question about pretty much anybody else on the team. But Sneed, for sure. Because there is a question when it comes to Sneed about whether or not he actually wanted to be here. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number here on the program. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, The Athletic did an analysis of how hot every coach's seat is at the moment. For instance, things are pretty hot for old Doug Peterson out there in Jacksonville. How hot is Brian Callahan's seat? We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So, again, I'm not saying Brian Callahan should be fired. I've never said that. I've never just come out and said Callahan's doing such a bad job that he should be fired. But I do view Brian Callahan as collateral damage when I think this organization last year should have cleaned house and they didn't. And if they have to clean house this year to get the GM and the coach on the same page, this would be the time to do it. And I would hate it, but that's just reality. But The Athletic did a survey. They had their power rankings that were out. And with the power rankings, it was each coach's hot seat status. For instance, Antonio Pierce with the Raiders is hot. Doug Peterson with Jacksonville burned to ashes, according to The Athletic. And at 31 in the power rankings, Jacksonville's 32. That'll be decided on the grass next week. But at 31, Brian Callahan of the Titans has a rating according to The Athletic, and this is Josh Kindle that wrote this. And I would really like to know if, if Joe had chimed in on something like this, but I guess Joe doesn't do Titans anymore. The Athletic says that Brian Callahan's seat is quote-unquote cool as far as hot seat analysis on the power rankings is concerned. Quote, Brian Callahan is not going to be fired after his first season. But the whole let's move on from Mike Vrabel thing feels like a mistake as Thanksgiving approaches. The more likely change in Tennessee is probably at quarterback, where Will Levis is 35th among qualifying quarterbacks in EPA per dropback at minus 0.16. Callahan will get another shot with a quarterback of his choosing next year. So Brian Callahan gets no blame for why Will Levis sucks. And Brian Callahan gets to pick the next quarterback according to this. And I actually think that that is how a lot of people feel when it comes to the Titans and the coach and the hot seat and everything else. Blame the quarterback, do something else. My dad on Sunday after the game's like, I'm done with Levis. I want somebody new. I'm tired of the same results. And I said, Dad, Will Levis is a symptom. He is not a cause. I actually think Brian Callahan is a symptom and not a cause as well. But I have to ask this. Is there really going to be no consequence at all for this massive underachievement of a season? We've played the cut time and time again. Mike Keith asks Amy Adam Strunk, what should Titans fans be excited about in the future? This is the day they fired Mike Vrabel. And Amy Adam Strunk says the future is very bright. We have Ran. Yay. We have a young quarterback. Again, not that I give a rat's ass about this, but minus 0.16 EPA per drop back. I mean, that's so stupid, but whatever. By every metric, Levis has stunk this year. But we have a young quarterback. We have cap space. The future is bright. And what did Amy say? She said good days were ahead sooner rather than later. She said last season was unacceptable. They won 6 games last year. They're 2-8. And nobody, again, this was just the coach's hot seat. Maybe Rand is the one who ends up getting fired for this. But there are a lot of people that seem to believe that nobody except for the quarterback is going to be held responsible at all for how much of an underachievement this year has been. And I was doing a Google search the other day for Titans cash spent because I wanted to see how much cash a certain player was making. And the first thing that came up was an article that TD wrote on September 2nd at ESPN.com. And it was about all the money the Titans spent in free agency and the optimism going into the year. And so here are a couple snippets from that TD article. Because again, I keep asking, nobody is to blame for this massive underachievement of a season. Quote, the smile on Tennessee Titans general manager Rand Carthon's face said it all as he sat down with the media to recap how he got to the final 53-man roster after last week's cut-down day. It was clear that Carthon likes where this team stands on paper. So again, on September 2nd, Rand likes where this team is. Callahan at the time, quote, "It's weird, but I welcome pressure because it means something is expected. Pressure to me means that there's expectation, and I like that. You earn that right. If there was no pressure, it wouldn't be much fun." Well, you're 2-8. If there was pressure and you had this season and the expectations were high, you get fired. But again, everybody's telling me can't blame Callahan. Pressure is a privilege, Will Levis said. It means there's a lot of eyes on you, a lot of people counting on you to succeed. Pressure is cool. I welcome it with open arms. We need to win, Jeffrey Simmons said. That's the expectation when you're in the National Football League. We did bring in a lot of guys to our roster. They have the same mindset of everyone else, and that's to win. When you've been a fan of the game for so long and see the guys we've signed like Diggs, like Jamal Adams, that excites you. I've been watching guys like Jamal since he was in college. We brought in a lot of guys that can play at a high level. If they come in and play the way I know they can play, it will help us out a lot in winning games. And none of that has happened this year. This team has regressed. They are worse this season than they were last year. I was talking about how last week they were on pace for 52.8 sacks compared to 49 sacks allowed last year. Because they allowed 5 on Sunday, that number is now like 58 sacks for the season. So they're actually starting to be on pace for significantly more sacks allowed. This team has regressed. This team is terrible. And I guess I'm angry at this Athletic article, which again, it's no indication of how Amy feels. It's no indication how everybody else feels or anything like that. But when I read things like, well, now it looks like it was a bad idea to fire Mike Vrabel, but Brian Callahan's going nowhere. It's all Levis's fault with his EPA per drop back, and his seat is cool. I'm like, cool? You can't regress that much and have certainty for your job, can you? And some of this is the fact that nobody outside of Nashville cares about the Titans. So this guy writing an article for The Athletic is like, Titans. But again, nothing good has happened this year. The Titans, to the point that we want to win, we don't want to almost win, that I am happy with a 10-point loss where the quarterback didn't stink up the joint and the other team took over the stadium. And I'm happy with it simply because they didn't get blown out. And there's no consequence for that. But there were consequences for Mike Vrabel for not meeting expectations, even though he had a winning record and he won division titles and he was the coach of the team that went to the AFC title game and he was the coach of the year. So there are expectations for Vrabel, but there's not expectations for this guy. There were expectations for John Robinson. He won 61% of his games. They were 7-5 and in first place the day he got fired. They had won 2 straight division titles. They'd been to the playoffs 3 years in a row. But there are no expectations for this guy. They went 6-11 last year. They blew it in free agency, signing guys like Andre Dillard. And then they turned around and they drafted a guard in the first round who sucks. And that guy got promoted. And I just can't believe that. Like, I know the Titans are poorly run. I know they do stupid stuff. I know all of that. Look, I get it. At the same time, I have a really hard time believing that nobody's going to be held responsible for this and that everybody's okay with that. I'm not sure I can get there. 615-737-1025. Adam in Portland. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Adam in Portland is up next here on the program. Adam, thank you for waiting. Go ahead.
I just feel like you're overthinking it, is all it is. Like everything you're saying today ties together. Why is L'Jarius Sneed not playing? Because we're tanking, and you don't want to put a $20 million corner on the field that will help you win games. So, yeah, they're probably like, lay out. It's the same.
It wasn't helping you win the other games.
Well, he wasn't great to start, but nobody is when they start out with a new team. So I expect him to play a lot better when he comes back, but he shouldn't be rushing back if we're tanking. It's the same thing with should Brian Callahan be fired? No, he's already told you We go in and we conference with Amy. What are they saying? Hey, we're going to tank. Our quarterback sucks, and we're going to go get a quarterback. I guarantee you that's what all that is. That's the only thing that makes sense to me, is that this is all part of a plan to tank. They're not going to fire any of those dudes. They may fire Rand and let the other dude work it. That does make sense. But as far as a whole new staff come in, that's not happening. Special teams coordinator will get fired, and they'll act like they did something with that. But no, this is all part of it, dude. And you can't play good players and expect to lose games. So that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that the best – I have a hard time believing they're tanking. Thank you, Adam. I have a hard time believing they're tanking simply because the head coach cried the last time they won a game. So I have a hard time with that. The head coach almost punched a referee on Sunday. So I have a hard time believing that they're actively trying to lose. That being said, the fact that that's the best you got tells you how bad of a situation this is. And if Brian Callahan was tanking, there is one thing that he would do, and today he said he's going to do it. We got to get to that next. And then your phone. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
I love Chris to death. I do. But he doesn't, a lot of times he don't want to say anything bad about a player. He always caveated with, no disrespect. No, this is disrespect. You bad, man. You ain't good. Not at least not for this team. Let me say that. At least not for this team. You have not proven in the 1 million times they've given you an opportunity to play this position. You have not proven that you can play this position, but they keep trotting you out there and they're asking the fans to come watch that stuff? Seriously? And you ask me, well, who else they going to put out there? Not him.
Wills VTech.
Go find Wills VTech.
He's 42.
He probably can block better than PT.
Will, if you're listening.
Again, PT may be the nicest guy in the world, and I'm not doubting that. But right now, he can't play the right tackle position the way you need to play it in the NFL, which tells me he doesn't need to be a starter in this league, nor does he need to be a backup at this point.
That was D. Mace talking about Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT.
PT. So I listened to the Brian Callahan press conference today, and I will say this. I listened at about 75% intent, which is not as good as I normally do, but much better than I ever did in high school French class. So I got to give myself a little credit, but not a lot. But I did not hear Brian Callahan say that PT was going to be starting at right tackle, but I saw Jim Wyatt put out on Twitter. Brian Callahan announces that Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT,
will be starting again at right tackle. I'm sorry, what? PT will be starting versus Danico Autry, Will Anderson, Daniil Hunter, those guys on Sunday. I mean, Derek is the president of the Rand Club, the Rand Carthon fan club. He is the president of the Rand Club. And even he is like, do not play PT anymore at all, ever again. And I got to say, last week, PT gave up 2 sacks. And that was when he was rotating in and out of the game with somebody else. PT has given up, well, the right tackle spot as a whole, I think PT has given up 7 sacks this year. And they're going to put him back out there?
There's no one else.
What about Ojukwu?
I don't know. Wasn't OJ? He was scratched this week, wasn't he?
I think he was a healthy scratch, though.
Yeah, Watson's hurt with the back. He's still.
I mean,
practice.
they told me that in training camp, they told me Ojukwu was battling for the job. So why not play him? Isaiah Prince? I mean, he can't get lined up, but I mean, maybe you can correct that. You can't correct what's wrong with PT. He sucks, and it looks like he doesn't care that he sucks. So one of 2 things is happening here with Brian Callahan. Either he's tanking or he's trying to get fired, because that is the only explanation that I can figure out for why in the world they play PT. I mean, I cannot believe that they're not going to go sign some Scarbini off of somebody's practice squad right now to start on Sunday.
At least just try and see what it looks like.
Over PT. Like, I'm serious. This is the Texans. This is the kind of game that, again, we've seen Amy lose her marbles over. And I believe that if Mike Vrabel and the Titans have beaten the crap out of the JV Texans after they went on the road and beat Miami last year, that I believe Mike Vrabel probably still be the coach of the Titans. But he's going to go to Houston and he's going to stick PT out there at right tackle? I mean, are you trying to get Will Levis hurt? Like, I'm a serious question here. Again, remember what they say. Either you're coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. I think it's a bad enough blemish that the Titans went into this year thinking, you know what? PT can play right tackle. I think it's bad enough. I think it's embarrassing that they told Corey Curtis before the last preseason game that they felt good about PT at right tackle. I think it's embarrassing that the fat guy on the radio knew more than they did about right tackle. I think it's embarrassing that on him. I think that's all bad enough. But the fact that they're going back to the well against the Texans, D'Amico, if you are listening, stick Will Anderson on that side. If you are a fantasy football player and you have the Texans on defense, start them. I mean, guys, we saw what Danico Autry used to do to the Colts. I'm a little worried about what Danico Autry might do on Sunday against PT. So, again, Adam in Portland says they're tanking. I have a hard time believing that when I see the coach in tears after they win a game against a crappy Patriots team in overtime. But then he says he's starting PT, and it's kind of hard for me to think that you're not tanking if you're going to do that. That would be like the Predators saying, you know what? We're going to start Jared Stillman on the first line tonight. They're probably trying to lose when you do that. Chris says, on Monday, I do not want people complaining about how bad Will Levis was because he got knocked the hell out of because his crappy coaching staff is allowing this Scarbini to play right tackle. One texter says, I don't care about his prior knowledge. Being bottom of the barrel at right tackle and saying Radens is a guard who's not even great without giving him some sort of a look is absolutely a fireable offense. I mean, I am sorry. This is so bad. This is so bad. PT at right tackle. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company. 1025-1063 The Game. Be sure to join the Predators this Saturday for a special 6 o'clock puck drop as they welcome back to Smashville Hockey Hall of Famers David Poyle and Shea Weber. There will be a ceremonial puck drop ahead of the game. Coverage begins at 5 o'clock on 102.5 The Game and, of course, on the Game Nashville app. Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports, Fox Sports Radio, joins us now on the program. Fitz, everybody in Titanland is kind of talking around reality. And I feel like everything, whether it's about what's the future with Will Levis or what should they do at right tackle or who should they draft, or even the Nick Westbrook-Akine discussions about whether or not he should be given a 3-year, $30 million whatever. I think it's all a waste of time. I had somebody say the other day, are you going to break down the Texan game on Sunday? And the short answer to that is no, because it doesn't matter. What matters to me is what Amy Adam Strunk is going to do at the end of the year. And she has 3 choices. Clean house. She can make Rand Carthon, or she can clean house and start over. She can, put everybody on notice for next year. And then, of course, they will do their jobs accordingly. Or she can say, no, this is going to take longer than I think. We're entering a full-on rebuild. Fans, be patient. And I don't envision that. So I ask this question to you. Which route do you expect the Titans to go?
I expect versus what I wish they would do. I think that the Titans are most likely to look at all of it and say, let's keep running it back. We need time. This is a new regime. It's a new process, and we have to try and figure it out. I think part of what makes this difficult for a lot of teams is trying to figure out where you stand. Like, okay, so we talk a lot about quarterbacks. You and I have talked a lot about the draft. And sometimes you got to look at it and say, okay, who's my guy? Who am I targeting? So right now the question becomes, if you are Amy Adam Strunk, are you talking to people behind the scenes quietly and just putting feelers out as they do this time of year to figure out what the interest for somebody like Ben Johnson would be or Slowick would be? Are you looking at that sort of stuff? Do you think that this would be the spot that they want to go to of all the openings that are out there? Maybe if you start to put feelers out and you feel like there's somebody out there that you really believe you got to strike now for, then you strike. But otherwise, I think a lot of times what organizations start to look at is that, man, all those coaching contracts are guaranteed, right? All that money has to be paid out. Do you really just want to, after 1 year, admit total defeat in what you've done? I don't think so. I think ego gets in the way of that. So what I think they're most likely to do is bring most of the core components back, try and figure out a better solution to quarterback, and then take the best player available at the top of the first round and hope and pray that that gives them some opportunity. I don't think that there's a quick fix. I hate to be Debbie Downer to everybody. I don't think that there's something right around the corner that's suddenly going to make the Titans the Commanders and a 9-win football team in a year.
So with that being said, I do hear what you're saying, and I think a lot of people are looking at the quarterbacks as the get-out-of-jail-free card in the draft. I'm not convinced that's the case. But the Titans
neither of these quarterbacks are that.
The Titans' right tackle situation is so bad that, Will Levis had a 50-yard touchdown taken off the board on Sunday because the right tackle can't get lined up. The right tackles, we talked about Jermaine Illuminor, and you were like, Jermaine Illuminor sucks. And with the Giants, Jermaine Illuminor has not been great. But Jermaine Illuminor's allowed 3 sacks in the season. The Titans' right tackles allowed 3 sacks on Sunday. Right tackle's not the only problem on this team. They have many problems on this team, but it is the most obvious one, and it was the most obvious one going into the season. What does it say if Amy Adam Strunk keeps the same people that let this season unravel so much because of that position itself at the end of the year?
Well, I hate to point fingers, but if you were going to sit here and go into a room full of people everywhere and ask them, hey, who are the most respected offensive line coaches in the NFL? Let's be honest. One of the things that we all say coming into the season that we really liked about the Titans coaching staff is that they have one of the most respected offensive line coaches in the NFL. So if you are getting such garbage play, no offense to the individuals, but if you're getting such trash play out of your right tackle and you have one of the most respected offensive line coaches in the league, then you do have to start. That's yet another data point that squarely points to Rand Carthon and asks what we've seen here that makes anybody believe that he's a home run guy to run a franchise. And I just, what is the inspire for anyone that sits here and tells me that Rand Carthon deserves another year? I guess my question to the world is, what is the flagship, oh my God, I can't believe you got that guy, this is epic moment that we've had so far from Rand Carthon that sticks out as the reason you want him to build the rest of your franchise? Everybody knows my Raiders fandom, and I don't think Tom Telesco was an inspiring choice
as the GM for them this year when they hired. But why they hire him? Because he found Justin Herbert. He's got one. All you got to do is get one home run, and you'll continue to work. So, and then you've got Joe Douglas, who gets fired from the Jets, who has actually drafted fairly well across the board. He's had some big misses in the first round, but he built a fairly talented roster, but didn't get the quarterback right, didn't get the coach right. He got fired. Like, I'm looking at it and saying, man, why are we giving benefit of the doubt to Rand Carthon if the right tackle is such a problem that one of, if not the greatest offensive line coach in the NFL, according to every former player and every coach that I talk to, is on that staff and can't get anything done with them, then you got a talent issue, and that squarely goes to your front office.
So I'm going to answer your question by saying the response to that, and this is not what I believe, but the response to that, they will say, is J.C. Latham. And J.C. Latham has been very good as a rookie left tackle. That would be the response.
I'll give you, J.C. Latham. And look, we talked a lot about that during the draft, and certainly, yes, J.C. Latham has been very good. I also think that sometimes, right place, right time, there were a couple of offensive linemen in that worked. Like, look, if the Titans want to sit there and say, hey, we're going to rebuild it by taking an alignment in the draft, and now we're going to have our 2 flagship tackles for the next 15 years, maybe that's part of how they rebuild. That'd be a hell of a lot smarter for the Titans than it would be to reach for one of the quarterbacks that I think 2 quarterbacks are going to go in the top 5 this year, and neither of them deserve to go in the top 20.
I'm going to cut you off right here. I'm going to cut you off right here because it just popped in my head when you talked about okay, let's say the Titans take a right tackle this year. They pick, number 3, and they take the kid out of LSU, who everybody says is apparently a great tackle. I don't think anybody would say that that's a terrible idea. And, Paul Kaharski, I think, trying to get at me last week, made one of the stupidest arguments I think that has ever come out of his mouth, where he tried to argue that at the end, Floyd Reese as a general manager was as bad as Rand Carthon has been now. And if you go over those drafts, it's not even close. And the reason I bring this up is because in the 2005 draft, the Titans took Michael Roos in the 2nd round, who was their left tackle for a decade, and David Stewart in the 4th round, who was their right tackle for 8 years. If, again, you can have a GM who was a good GM, I don't think Floyd belongs in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, though I do think he is. Everybody knows how I feel about Floyd, and Fitz, I think you probably feel similarly in terms of his knowledge. But if we can see a GM draft a franchise left tackle and a guy who starts for 8 years at right tackle in the same draft, why do we have to look at this like, well, we got to wait till next year and use the number 1 on the right tackle? Like, shouldn't Rand Carthon be getting starters in the 4th round if he was a good GM?
That's what everybody's shooting for. Man, that's easier said than done. Offensive line play coming out of college right now is just particularly poor. So, it's just the transition from guys in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round has been really tough. And so I agree with your assessment. Like, look, if you're realistically hoping to add 1 home run piece per offseason, then what's it going to take? Another 15 years? And suddenly by then, maybe the team's good. I don't think that that's realistic. You need, and this is sort of the metric I've said to you before, and I think fans need to remember sometimes, a home run offseason is 5 new high-level starters. 5 new, oh my God, whether you got them in the draft or free agency, oh my God, this guy is it for us. I say that's a home run off season. One insider I talked to last week said, no, that's a Hall of Fame off season. So if you believe you've got a Hall of Fame GM, then you're looking at 4 or 5 high quality, oh my God, impactful guys to fix it off season. Well, how many new starters do the Titans need right now? So this is part of where I think you're right. Like, even if you're not turning around getting your, oh my God, 8-year starter on the offensive line in the 3rd, 4th round, you better at least be getting serviceable. Like, you got to have pretty good while you're looking for epic, because if all you do is get 1 or 2 guys a year, 1 or 2 lucky home runs a year, ain't going to rebuild a roster. Like, the Titans probably need, 15, 16 new starters? So if they need that, what are we talking, 3 off seasons? Nobody wants to wait 3 home run off seasons to get it done. So that's where you got to look at Rand Carthon and believe that, A, he can get you 4 or 5 oh my God guys, and B, in the draft, he can get you another 3 or 4 reliable guys while you're building towards what you're headed towards. This is such a wildly big rebuild. That's why everybody is, frankly, so quarterback obsessed, because the concept is, if I land Jaden Daniels, I even talked to somebody around the Washington organization couple weeks ago, and he said something that I've heard Charles Robinson say several times to me on Yahoo, that they acknowledge within Washington that they're winning more games than their roster deserves right now because their quarterback's doing it for them. That's why everybody's swinging for home runs right now, because you just can't hit. If you can't hit singles, might as well hit a home run and hope to God that keeps you in the league. That's what guys are trying to do.
Yeah. Fitz, the Minnesota Vikings. On Sunday, we're doing the pregame show on the roof at JBJ's. And, I've been doing that pregame show now for 10 years. And I have never seen a visiting fan base take over Nissan Stadium, Broadway, and the rooftop bars the way that the Vikings did on Sunday. Look, the Vikings have a very proud franchise. They have a good history going all the way back to Bud Grant and Fran Tarkenton. Again, Minnesota, very loyal. But I've said they're a tier 3 fan base. They're not the Steelers, the Cowboys, the Packers, the Raiders, the 49ers. They're not even a tier 2 fan base like Buffalo or Cleveland or New England. A tier 3 fan base, Minnesota took over the stadium. Is there any justification for that other than Titans fans basically putting their middle finger in the owner's face to make a couple of bucks for a fan base that wants to come down to Nashville?
No, I mean, the hard part about this, and look, I actually saw a couple of weeks ago on social media that Vikings fans, boosters, those sorts of things, had picked the Nashville as their big away game this year. So they were trying to put a huge group together. It doesn't surprise me they did this. I deal with this all the time as a Raiders fan when they talk about Vegas. Fact is, Nashville has the same problem. You and I talked about this 10 years ago. Nashville is a city full of people that want to be entertained and have entertainment options, just like Vegas. So if you're not going to give them an entertaining option,
new, Fitz. Like Joe Rexrode brought this point up. Nashville's a great place to go. That Nashville, this isn't 2004. Like, Nashville didn't become a great place to visit yesterday. It's not like the Minnesota. Again, this is the Vikings. This isn't the Steelers.
Yeah, but this is what Vikings fans do. When the schedule comes out, Vikings fans look at it and say, what's the most fun city to go party in? And the answer to that is going to be, it's the same reason that, again, like I've gone to Raiders games out in Allegiant and the place is filled 80% sometimes, like Steelers fans, 85%. But even when you're taking on really bad, I was at the Vikings Raiders game last year and the place was 2/3 full with Vikings fans. Because you look at your away schedule when you live in a place that's cold and dreary and disgusting, no offense, Minnesota, and you say, where do I want to go party? What's the one away game I want to go to? The answer to that's going to be Nashville or Vegas. They're just party cities. So then the question is,
but if the Titans
are
were
your locals going to sell the tickets?
If the Titans were 8-2, there's no way it would have been packed like that with Viking fans.
No, because you got to sell the tickets. Like, that's the thing. Like, and at the end of the day, if you are a Titans fan, why would you go sit in that stadium to watch a team get their butt kicked by Minnesota? Like, what's the incentive to do that? If somebody turns around and offers you money like that, and this is what when Amy Adam, we all remember years ago when Taylor Lewan made it very clear that he was disappointed that they had to go to a silent count in their home stadium. And I remember at the time Lewan was livid about it. Fans were giving him grief. They were like, well, go win some more football games. This is always going to be an issue for the Titans because, frankly, if you live in Nashville and your team sucks, you're not going to spend the time or the money. You'll spend your own money doing other things. You'll sell your ticket to make a profit. I don't blame fans. I blame owners. I blame Mark Davis for the fact that Allegiant's never full with home fans. I blame Amy Adam Strunk and her organization for the reason that there are seats. And let's not get it twisted. You're about to build a multi-billion-dollar stadium. I can promise you, I've been to a bunch of stadiums in the NFL. When you build a new stadium, fan bases want to come see it. If the Titans stink when they build a new stadium, you're going to have this gross feeling of knowing that your public tax dollars went to build a stadium that doesn't even have a home field advantage because your ownership is too incompetent to put a team out that can compete year in and year out. And now everybody's going to be sitting around saying, we pay sales tax for what? We pay hotel tax for what? Like, this isn't going to go away for Nashville. This is only going to get worse if this team doesn't get better when they have that new stadium.
Fitz, you are cooking today, baby. As always, great stuff. We appreciate you. We'll talk soon.
Appreciate you, brother. Have a great week.
Yep, Jason Fitz on our program. Boy, I tell you, again, I think it's a total from the people that have the tickets, and I bet the season ticket holder base for the Titans is probably 65 to 75% of that stadium. And the season ticket holders, by not going and selling their tickets to Viking fans, or in my case, I gave them away probably to Viking fans, they basically took their middle finger, pointed it right at the owner's box, and said, this is for you. And I'm okay with that. 615-737-1025 on our program. The Predators got a Predator. There's something that they've announced that they're making a big deal about, and other people are going to make a big deal about this, and I'm trying to figure out what the big deal is. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. All right. I said we were giving away Jelly Roll tickets. We're giving them away now. Be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025, and you will see Jelly Roll live at Bridgestone Arena on Tuesday, November 26th. This contest is supplied by Chiba Hut Subs, serving up dank food and chill vibes, now open in Donaldson. I have been to the Jelly Roll show, and I can tell you it's awesome. So enjoy. Stillman and Company. So there was a press release that hit the air, right? Or hit, I guess, the news cycle right as we hit the air. And it is that the Nashville Predators and News Channel 5 have made an agreement to simulcast 3 Predators games in November and December. So on November 30th at Minnesota, 7 o'clock, December 14th at Colorado, 8 o'clock, and December 27th at St. Louis, 7 o'clock. The games will be on News Channel 5 as well as the FanDuel Sports Network. So what that means is the same broadcast with Willie and Chris and Hal and Lindsay and whoever, that will air on both the channel that you can watch the Predators now and News Channel 5. And I've seen some reaction to this, some of the quotes in here about just how awesome this is and great it is. For instance, Sean Henry says, "We are so excited to partner with Scripps Sports and FanDuel Sports Network to expand the reach of a few of our regular season games and give the best fans in sports more options to enjoy our games on selected nights. Having a simulcast between FanDuel Sports Network and News Channel 5 can serve as a new frontier for how our games are consumed on a regular basis. We are grateful to both broadcast partners on their flexibility and collaboration on these games." So here's, I guess, what I'll take from this. So I saw Alex Daugherty on Twitter was like, "This is a big deal." I think Alex Daugherty reported that the Predators, if Bally Sports had become bankrupt, or, I guess now FanDuel Sports Network, it's called Diamond Sports Group. That's who this is. If Diamond had become bankrupt and had not made it through the bankruptcy, then I believe the Predators, like some of these Major League Baseball teams have done, some of these basketball teams have done, the Predators would have had to go out and find their own TV channel. And again, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what Alex Daugherty reported. So now they're simulcasting 3 games, but I'm not sure what the big picture for this is. Like, I'm having a hard time figuring this out. What this feels like to me is it feels like one of those HBO free preview weekends where it's like, if you want more of The Sopranos and Sex with the City, call today to subscribe to HBO. Right? Like, it feels like 3 regular season Preds games. We're going to put them on Channel 5, and I'm sure they'll say, "Hey, be sure to download the FanDuel Sports Network app where you can pay $29.99 or whatever it ends up being, I don't know, per month in order to watch your Predators." Like, I think that's probably the benefit here. That's got to be the end result, right? Because the Diamond Sports Group, they're not going away. They survived bankruptcy last week. And the NHL has a deal with them, and I don't know how long it lasts. Baseball has basically gotten their deals on baseball terms. And it wouldn't surprise me if hockey was somewhat similar. But again, I'm trying to see what the big picture is here. Alex Daugherty hinted that this could be a sign of what's to come, where maybe next year the FanDuel Sports Network is simulcast on, but News Channel 5 is not going to show 82 games. So that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. So again, I hear people that are like, whoa, but I'm trying to figure out what this actually means other than on those 3 nights, you'll be able to watch the Preds on News Channel 5, and you won't have to pirate the game, or you won't have to download or log in or sign up or whatever.
It's free.
Which is very nice. But again, I'm trying to figure out kind of what's the play here? Like, what is the FanDuel Sports Network? What are they getting out of this by doing this? And I got to believe, we heard that Amazon is going to be able to, you're going to be able to subscribe to the FanDuel Sports Network via Amazon Prime Video. It sounds to me like they're going to load this up and infomercial the crap out of it, where it's going to be Willie constantly during the game, just sitting there and saying, be sure to subscribe on Amazon and be sure to download the app and be sure to. Is that going to be it? Somebody tell me. Who knows? 615-737-1025. Jared versus Joe is next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. It's 5 o'clock on a Wednesday. You know what that means. Caroline is here today. Caroline, how are you?
Hello, how we doing?
I am super outstanding, as always. It was good to see you last night at the BMG CMA Awards party last night. It was a great time.
It was a blast.
So it's good to see Caroline there. Joseph Robinette Rexroad Jr. is with us, as always, here for Jared versus Joe. Joseph, how are you?
Great. I wish I was invited to your fun little party.
You were not, but it wasn't my party. With that, it's time for Jared versus Joe.
Jared Stillman versus Joe Rexroad. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game.
All right, Caroline, where are we starting? Oh, excuse me. Jared
let's
versus
be
Joe is
clear.
presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. Caroline, where are we starting?
Let's be clear here. If there's any Rexroads getting invited to parties, it's obviously Katie Rexroad. Katie and
True.
Caroline Rexroad are easily the coolest Rexroads. Okay, first,
True.
Joe, you go first. Josh Kendall wrote in The Athletic that the seat temperature for Brian Callahan is cool. Do we agree? And if not, what should Brian Callahan's seat temperature be?
Yeah, I mean, I think a coach 10 games into a tenure, the seat should be cool. So I think so. I don't know. I'm certainly not good at predicting what Amy Adam Strunk is going to do. So I'm even more than normal. It's pure guesswork over here on this one. But yeah, I think it should be cool. I think if you get fired in year one, the recent example is Nathaniel Hackett, who did some in-game stuff that was truly like appalling. It was so bad. Certainly there's fair criticisms of Brian Callahan and the product has been bad, of course. But I'm not sitting here saying, this is just an atrociously coached team. I think on the special teams, that is true. And I think that next year we'll see a new special teams coach. But Brian's actual seat, I would tend to think it would be cool.
I think Brian Callahan's seat should be hot.
Hot?
Yeah.
Turn it up, baby. Yeah.
Well, I mean, number
Tell us.
one,
Turn that
I
blowtorch
would not
on.
I would not necessarily fire Brian Callahan like in a silo, like isolated. I would view Callahan being fired as collateral damage. That Amy gives up on Brian Carthon, Chad Brinker, and because she transitions again, which again, it would not be surprising to see the Titans pull a management reorganization for the third, or I guess fourth January in a row. But because of that, I would view Callahan as collateral damage. If you hire a new general manager or a new chief football operator, if you do that, again, I think we've learned that you're probably better off letting that person pick the coach than you are saying, okay, you need to work with this guy as the coach. And if that's the case, then Brian Callahan gets fired again via collateral damage. And
But
I
that's not what
absolutely
Caroline's
think
asking, right? I mean, I don't think so, Caroline. Aren't you asking specifically just about Brian's seat?
Well, yes, but I do think that this job security of the general manager or general managers, if you want to put it that way, with the powers that be with the Titans, I think that's relevant. Sustained.
I mean, I feel like you're
but
asking.
we know that Amy's fine switching up. We know that Amy's fine, doing one here and then one there. So, I mean, yeah, it could happen. It could happen.
But
the way
I think
Jared's
it's less
saying
about
it,
what
but-
we think Amy's going to do and more about what you think the Titans should do or what you would do if you were the owner of the
Right.
Titans.
Well, last week we had the predetermined Jared win on the GM firing, which was your first question, and that's fine. And we disagreed, and you knew what our
There are
takes
no
were, and that's fine.
predetermined wins, Joe.
You knew exactly what my answer would be. You knew exactly what his would be, and you made that the determination of who won. So it was a predetermined win. So
It was
if this
not
is
about
the
what you
GM,
thought. It was more about the evidence that you used to support it.
Joe, stop complaining. Can I answer the question?
I mean, you've
Thank
already veered off to not answer the question, but
No.
keep going.
Well, again, she's saying, like, what should it be? I think it should be hot. because I think Brian Callahan should be in trouble given the situation that he finds himself in. And I hate to say it, but he signed up to work with Ran Carthon. So he knew when he took this job that the owner was trigger happy. He knew he was coming to a situation where the general manager had won a power struggle over a very popular and successful coach. And he knew that the expectation was to win because that's what they said. There is an article that TD wrote in September, and there is a quote from Callahan in there about saying how he enjoys pressure because it means that there are expectations. Well, the Titans have managed to fail every expectation that they had coming into the year. The quarterback is worse. The team is worse. The stadium is overrun by a tier 3 fan base in Minnesota. It's all bad across the board. There is nothing, I think, that you can say in defense of Brian Callahan other than, well, it's his first year. It could be more the other guy's fault than it is his fault. But again, like, to me, that's collateral damage. And he signed up for it. They haven't made any progress. Again, he's replacing Mike Vrabel, who's a very popular coach. And I think the other thing we have to remember he's choosing to start PT on Sunday against the Texans. That is a choice that he is making. And so for me, I think that I truly believe that Amy is not going after her experience with Malarkey and Robinson and Vrabel and Carthon. I do not think Amy Adam Strunk is going to fire Ran Carthon and then bring in a general manager to work with Brian Callahan. I think she's going to just tear the Band-Aid off if she does something like that. And if that's the case, then I think, again, the question is how hot's the seat? That means how close you to getting fired for whatever the reason you may be fired is. And I think it's hot.
Okay.
You don't think you don't think he's getting fired?
No, I don't. I guess we'll find out.
Caroline, what's next?
Okay, Jared, you start first. We got a right tackle problem. Obviously, PT's playing at right tackle this weekend. I don't know how great I feel about that, how great anyone feels about that. So who should be, while we're on the topic of accountability, who should be held accountable for the offensive line issue and more specifically the right tackle issue?
So I think it should be...
And I ban you from telling the right tackle story, okay? Let's hurry this process up.
So I think it's on Carthon and Brinker. And I'm going to tell you why. Because they were here last year. And so what I believe happened is I believe that Brian Callahan watched the tape and Bill Callahan watched the tape. And they saw the physical attributes that Nicholas Petit-Frere, Ian, a.k.a.
PT.
They saw the physical attributes that PT had, the same physical attributes that got him a scholarship to Ohio State. They saw the physical attributes and thought, you know what, that's something we can work with. The problem is that PT has no heart. Derek Mason said it, not me, but I'm backing it up. PT does not have it inside of himself. He stunk as a rookie, though. I will say this. Pro Football Focus says he's equally as bad this year as he was as a rookie. I'll agree with Joe. It wasn't this bad. I think Dennis Daly took a lot of attention away from PT suckage. And I think the fact that he was a rookie and there was he's a rookie. The same things they say about Devondre Sweat now. Well, he's a rookie. Skoronski last year. I think that kind of blunted the terribleness of PT as a rookie. PT was god-awful last year. He allowed 11 pressures on 66 pass snaps. That's horrible last year in a very limited amount of time that he played. And so, again, last year, Ran Carthon, Chad Brinker were here when PT got suspended for the gambling thing, and they had to scramble for Chris Hubbard. And so the fact that there wasn't an insurance policy on the roster, even though Bill Callahan said he could coach him, even though Brian Callahan probably thought they could coach him, to me, that lays on the feet of the personnel guys of not knowing the makeup of a very important part of their team. And with guys like Jermaine Illuminor available in free agency, Morgan Moses available in a trade, and Roger Rosengarten drafted by the Ravens at 62, there were options to do something at right tackle, and they didn't. So I put it on Carthon and Brinker.
Well, I certainly put a lot on Nicholas Petit-Frere himself. As we talked about when he did it, the whatever fantasy football thing he's doing. I mean, I can't imagine
That's so bad.
I can't imagine anything more tone deaf given what he has gone through. And now, as you look at his performance and think back to that, I can't take him seriously. So, I look at his gambling suspension differently because of that. Because, his one time doing that, plenty of players have gotten that. I get it. It's still like you should have been smarter than that. But one time, fine. But to follow that up with that at that time of year when you're trying to reestablish yourself in the NFL, to me, just tells me you're an unserious NFL player. I don't necessarily disagree with what Jared said. I mean, I think certainly those guys deserve blame for not having.
Shouldn't Carthon and Brinker know if he's an unserious player, Joe?
Yeah, to some extent. Yeah, to some extent. And, again, I don't know what the daily information on Petit-Frere is. It must have been, I have to think when that happened, every single person in that building was like, what? Or eye roll, or you're kidding me, right? Not, oh, yeah, that figures. If it was, oh, yeah, that figures, then I don't think they would have gone the way they did. I do think Bill Callahan, you have to give some blame to him, right? Because I have to believe that everything they did with the offensive line, they talked about how much film they watched with him and how detailed he got and how specific he got on all these things, including prospects they were looking at, including their returning players. So I still think it had to be a misread to some extent on his part. Yeah, Petit-Frere was a serviceable player as a rookie. He had some bad games and some good games. He was not this level of awful. I think certainly the front office deserves some blame for not supplementing or just seeking a new result together. I just have to think that they acted on Bill Callahan's advice or belief that he could figure this out, and obviously he has.
But Bill Callahan didn't know PT, Joe.
I understand that, but we're obviously talking about the player. We're talking about the film. We're talking about the player. So again, you are making the jump that this ridiculous thing he did is easily apparent to all at all times that he's whatever, a guy who doesn't want to work or whatever
Unreliable is the
it
word that I use.
Yeah. Yeah, but see but even with that, he got hurt last year. He had a nasty injury, so that's another thing that it takes him out of commission, and then he's out of sight, out of mind. I'm not trying to make excuses for those guys. Yes, I agree. They deserve some blame too. I would just not give none to Bill Callahan.
I just think it's ridiculous that you're saying, well, I think I have to blame the player. What? What?
Well,
we can blame the player. Whose fault is Isaiah Wilson? Now, let's just blame Isaiah Wilson for Isaiah Wilson.
Caroline, how did you tell me the question exactly, Caroline?
Who should be held accountable for the Titans' offensive line and right tackle issues?
Yeah, okay. Held accountable in Petit-Frere's case is don't play again, and that's not working out. So
yeah, he started
held accountable. That's the thing. Look, Bill Callahan's track record is what it is. So this 10-game sample doesn't blow that up. But like if I'm Amy Adam Strunk, I am asking about the whole process. Who said what to who, and also did you guys not know here through his time here that it was going to go this way? So yeah, if I'm her, you're certainly going to your front office people first and finding out what they thought and what Bill Callahan told them.
Here's what I think happened. I think what happened is Bill Callahan watched a film, and the one thing the film cannot tell you is somebody's head or somebody's heart. And Bill Callahan said, yeah, I think there's something there that we can coach. And they said, okay, Bill Callahan said it. And so they just went with that. And instead of, I don't know, were these guys not paying attention last year? Were these guys not around? Were these guys not? I had somebody tell me that Mike Vrabel hated Nate Davis, hated him. And I said it on the air after, I was like, guys, Nate Davis is not coming back. Mike Vrabel hates Nate Davis. Jim Wyatt wrote something in his mailbag where someone said, I think we should re-sign Nate Davis. And Jim Wyatt said, I don't think that's going to happen. And the Bears signed him.
The Bears aren't big fans either.
Nate Davis got hurt this year, got his guaranteed money, then came back, practiced 3 days, showed up on Sunday and said, my back's bothering me. And the Bears cut him because they knew this guy doesn't give a rat's ass. Again, with PT, the proof's kind of, to me, it's kind of always followed him a little bit. Like there's something missing, whether it's his draft profile from Dane Brugler that said, watch him play nobody tech and he looks like a first-round draft choice. Watch him play Michigan and he looks like an undrafted free agent. Whether it's the fact that the guy was the 5-star recruit and he played left tackle at Ohio State and he went in the 3rd round of the draft, that is a red flag as to why this doesn't add up. The gambling suspension's a part of it. Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker were here last year. So if PT was putting in the work, if he was committed, if he was all in, if he was all those things, and now he's just all of a sudden not, that's so hard to believe. So to me, it has to be on them. Not just like, well, but Bill Callahan said he could coach him. Bill wasn't here last year. Bill doesn't know him.
That's all fine, but what you just said there also is possible, right? Is it possible or not? That
it's not very likely.
The Petit-Frere, shows up to work and does. Again, this goes back to like whenever they drafted an Ohio State guy. God, you figured Vrabel had pretty good intel. He knows everybody there. Like he knows every single assistant, trainer in the weight room there, right? So. I don't know, but to me, he's fallen off the cliff as a player, and sometimes people do stuff like that, and that's why if you can hold him accountable, which he's starting this week, it's still like he is the one who obviously has come in way short of all of their expectations. They didn't right, like they didn't think it could be this bad.
Somebody did. More Jared versus Joe next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. Nicholas Petit-Frere is the number one person to hold accountable for right tackle. Good.
I didn't say number one. Stop lying about what I say. Can you
That
do
is
that?
exactly what you said.
Can you go 5 minutes without lying? I didn't say the number one person. Let's start with him because he is the person here. I didn't say he's
usually
number
number
one.
That is normally number one. When you start with somebody, that is normally number one, Joe.
Absolute liar. Yeah, oh, is that what it is? Okay.
Caroline,
thanks for letting me know
when
the
you
rules.
start with somebody, is that usually number one?
But he's not innocent, Jared. Like, he's a big boy. He's a grown man.
PT?
He knows right from wrong. Yes.
Well, I mean, PT shouldn't even be in the NFL, but that's a different discussion for a different day.
That's not
Too
his
bad you're an
fault.
Excuse maker. Too bad you're a big excuse maker for Nicholas Petit-Frere, huh?
Oh,
You're
yeah,
Nicholas
me.
Petit-Frere Bobo. An MPS
Oh, yeah.
Bobo. How about
Me.
that?
The one that Kaharski and all you guys, it's only OTAs, you complaining about why PT's not out there. Yeah, because he's unreliable. Caroline.
Actually, that was about Tavondre Sweat for sure. Keep lying.
Jared's PTA, a PT apologist. Okay, Joe, you go first. Paul Kaharski said on your show that it could be a possibility that the Titans could fire Rand Carthon and put Chad Brinker in charge. Do you think that's a good idea?
I mean, to me, it's kind of like you signed up for this thing, so either do what you have or do something totally different. That's kind of how I look at it. Again, I'm not sitting here pretending like I know what those guys do all day long, you know? Maybe one of them's awesome and one of them really
You
sucks.
definitely
I
don't know since you thought that Brinker was like Steve Underwood. You said that today and Paul shot
Again,
that down.
Oh, good. I'm glad you brought up another lie. No, what I said, Jared, is in that situation, if the choice is between Brinker or Burt Nihill, then yes, Brinker should be a Steve Underwood for her, someone who does know football, even though you dismiss his entire life in football as something that might help him know football. That's what I said. Do you have any other lies you'd like to tell before
That's
I
not a
continue?
lie. Again, you
My
were like,
God.
but isn't Brinker like Underwood? And Paul was like, no, he's not like Underwood.
No,
That's Burke.
That's not true. Okay. I just explained what I said and what I meant, but can I continue? No, I would not do it. I mean, I would not separate. It's like either, again, the only reason to me that you would do that is if like Carthon is so underperforming. Everyone else is doing great. If you got him out of there, it would be a better operation. He's basically just dragging everything down. Okay, fine. But I mean, as far as like just based on the results, to me, like I am crazy. I know. Let these guys have another off season and evaluate from there. But if you are intent on changing this, on firing, then just start over. I mean, again, just start over. From the information I know, that's how I would approach it. I'm not separating those guys.
I mean, I would never do that because number one, isn't Chad Brinker a co-conspirator here when it comes to the decision-making that's been made? I mean, Chad Brinker over the last 2 years was assistant general manager and president of football operations. And as opaque as the Titans are with what Brinker actually does, Brinker has said things like he runs the analytics department. Well, how's the analytics doing? How are they doing things well for this football team? He said that he watches 4 hours of tape a day, that he's a scout at heart. He went to the Senior Bowl. So he's part of this horrendous roster construction one way or another. I think the second thing is, when I read his bio, I'm trying to figure out what it is that would make him the general manager, right? Like, he had 1 year as your assistant general manager, and then he got promoted to president of football operations. But, I mean, I'm reading through his bio that in his first season with the team, Brinker was involved in a variety of projects, including crafting the foundation of an analytics department, involvement for a new head coach search resulting in Brian Callahan, and building and executing the offseason strategy for player acquisition, both in free agency and the draft. How's that working out for you? So between that and the fact that he was never assistant GM with the Packers, I'm trying to figure out what it would, he was a scout. What about his resume says this guy should be the GM of the team? And so I can't go there. I mean, again, he's a part of this. He has been here for the last 2 years. So when they're having discussions, and this is why if I was Brinker and this were on the table, I'd be leaking things to my buddy Kaharski, saying things like, hey, I told Rand don't go with PT at right tackle. And I told Rand we should trade out instead of drafting the PT or drafting the DT that doesn't hit the quarterback. Or I guess in this case, he did hit the quarterback this week. He just didn't sack him. We need to trade down in the second round. I'd be leaking that stuff to Kaharski left and right if I was Brinker. But
this is hilarious. So I know you hate Kaharski and all that, but a couple things on this. I mean, and I give him crap for the Brinker thing, but first of all, like, do you not think that people who cover teams ever do interviews with like the people who run them? So Paul did one, and now, oh my God, Paul and Brinker. I mean, also, like, if Brinker did try to leak stuff like that to try to undermine Rand, you think Kaharski would just go with it? He would just go with it and be like, yeah, let's just write this.
He did with things that Vrabel said.
Okay. So
Vrabel said the thing about Tierra Tart, and Paul wrote it as if it was fact.
I think that okay. You seem to know what reporters are doing. You know who everybody's sources are.
You were involved in that, Joe.
Let me tell you something. If some member of the front office, if Brinker was like, hey, just put out there that that Rand did this or did that, Kaharski's not going to write that because that's not professional. That's lying on purpose.
I mean, all I can tell you is that
the Tart thing was a one-sided story. I agree. Now, it was also, that was an opinion of him. You're talking about, hey, put out lies that Rand did to get him out of here. Get out of it. I mean, you really think Kaharski would do that? I mean, that's just so dumb, Jared.
If Brinker said that to Paul, yeah, I think he'd say it. What's a reporter's job? To report.
If he's going to put his name on it, fine. He's not going to say a source said this if he's not verifying that elsewhere in the organization.
Oh, I think he'd do it.
Oh, okay. All right.
I think he would do that. But again, my whole point is I believe he's a co-conspirator in this. And thus, I mean, I think it's time for it would be a bad idea. It would be a bad idea just to make Rand the scapegoat and put Chad Brinker, who, again, I don't think his resume says general manager. I think it would be a mistake.
It's a terrible idea. It doesn't accomplish anything. It doesn't do anything. Okay, but finally, Jared, you go first. The college football playoff rankings came out last night, and if the playoff was today, then Tennessee would have gotten completely screwed out of the college football playoff. So do you think that Tennessee will ultimately get screwed out of the ultimate college football playoff?
No, I think Tennessee's going to make it. And I think yesterday basically said that, hey, Tennessee's going to make it because Indiana's going to lose by 47 points on Saturday to Ohio State, and they're going to drop. And there are more losses ahead for these teams that are ahead of Tennessee. Texas plays Texas A&M. Somebody has to lose that game. So I think what's ultimately going to happen is as long as Tennessee beats Vanderbilt, Tennessee will end up being in the final playoff picture. And again, this is why I hate these ranking shows, because I feel like the only reason these ranking shows exist is for ESPN to go crazy about, can you believe they ranked SMU number 13? I mean, my God, Paul Feinbaum, what do you think of that? And then when we get down to the nitty gritty, just like last year, the committee just says, nah, we actually think Alabama's better, flip them. And so because of that, I mean, again, the most important thing consistently over the years that's mattered is how many times you lose. Now, that's not the ultimate thing, as we saw last year with Florida State, but it is the most consistent thing that the different committees and college football has stood by. Tennessee's going to end up with 2 losses in the SEC. They have the win over Alabama. Thus, I think Tennessee, if Texas gets to claim Vandy as a good win, Tennessee will get to claim Vandy as a good win too when they beat them. Tennessee will be in the playoff.
But in that logic, Indiana would only have 1 loss. It would thus be in the top 12. It would be in the top 12 above a 2-loss Tennessee team. So therefore, the rankings last night would just be as chalk, and Tennessee would still be left out of the college football playoff.
The question, though, is actually more so about the Miamis of the world that are in, the ACC East and the ACC West, which is the Big 12, and how they view those teams. Like, is one loss in the ACC.
What are you talking about? No, Jared, what are you talking about? The ACC is getting one bid, dude. That doesn't matter. The ACC is getting one bid. The Big 12 is getting one bid. It doesn't matter. Notre Dame is getting in at this point. So then you have 8 spots left because of Group of 5. The ACC means nothing. They are getting one bid. If you're saying, Caroline, would Tennessee get screwed if it's chalk, or do I think they'll get in? I think they'll get in because I think enough things will break their way. And I think something will happen. It might even be Ole Miss at Florida, as weird as that sounds, because Ole Miss has looked great
That's
lately.
what I'm
but
saying.
Also, I still can't trust Lane to have it every time. And actually, Florida's playing pretty well. But Notre Dame Army is a huge one this week. Sneaky one, okay. And I think Penn State will win, but Penn State at Minnesota is not it's worth watching, worth tracking. I do think, though, if it came down to those things not going Tennessee's way, you also, of course, have Texas A&M, Texas. You have a third loss for somebody in the SEC title game, which, like it or not, that is going to count. So, if Alabama takes the third loss, in tandem with Tennessee beating them, I think Tennessee would be ahead of them. But if it goes not Tennessee's way and it's Indiana with one loss, Tennessee with 2, I do think that Indiana would get the nod as the 4th Big Ten team, and that's provided Ohio State doesn't just completely annihilate them. If that happens Saturday, then I think it looks different because Indiana will, of course, have no top 25 wins, and they'll have been outclassed that badly in the one, really good team they play. But if they are competitive, then I think that they would get the nod in the end over Tennessee.
God, I just, for some reason, I don't know why, and I know the committee does not make assumptions. I think Indiana's going to lose by 40 points, and I've been making that assumption for a week.
Well, if that's the case, then
why?
Then Tennessee. I don't think so either. I think Indiana's going to. I think it's going to be a good game. But if it does happen that way, Tennessee's in great shape.
I think Indiana is fugazi. Granted, I only watched them play Michigan, and I think Michigan sucks. So with that, Caroline, who wins this week?
So Jared wins this week, mostly because why are you laughing, Joe? I don't premeditate wins as badly as you want me to.
Oh,
okay. I think that you have to put a majority of the accountability on the right tackle situation, the offensive line situation as a whole, and really wherever these offseason acquisitions or offseason non-acquisitions at the right tackle position, you have to put that on Brand Carthon. You have to put that on Chad Brinker. Is PT innocent in all of the things that he's done and the embarrassing fantasy football thing and the gambling suspension? Of course he's not innocent in that. But a majority of the accountability has to be on Rand Carthon and the people who make those decisions. And the thing about Brian Callahan, I think it's a really tough situation. I think that his seat probably should be cool. But if you're going to fire Rand Carthon, I would probably agree that if you're going to get rid of one, you should probably just clean house. Bring in a GM that you trust to rebuild this team. Bring in a GM that you trust to make a top 3, top 4, top 5 pick, whatever it's going to be that the Titans pick in this draft. You should probably let that GM pick the coach that they want. But also, what if you really believe in Brian Callahan and you say, I'll find a GM that can work with Brian Callahan? So, I think Brian Callahan's a good coach. I think he's been dealt a pretty crappy card. But with that, I do think that Jared wins.
What makes you think that Brian Callahan's a good coach?
I like the way that when he speaks with the media and Rand's talking about the ball not bouncing their way, and he's like, yeah, that's a load of bull crap. I think that it's just not a very good team. I don't think that there's a lot of talent on this team. I don't think they have a good quarterback situation. I think that Brian Callahan has deserved, in a vacuum, another opportunity to come back as the head coach. But if you want to clean house, then I support the decision to clean house as well.
Yeah, I'm not saying Callahan's a bad coach. I just don't have any evidence that says he's a good coach. There's not anything tangible that, is, wow, that's a sign of a good, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but also, what does he have to work with?
Yeah. Again, he was the one that was telling you at the combine that he thought that Duncan and PT could do it, but who knows? All right, guys, thank you, Jared.
Bill Callahan said that he thought PT could do it, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a good look. Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville here on the program. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Got to tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. That's right. I had Hiller at my home yesterday, and they did a fabulous job, as they kind of seem to always do. And again, there's no question. I mean, I walked in yesterday when I got home from doing the show, and I saw the work Hiller had done. I had some electrical outlets installed, and I was like, Hiller never misses. That's right. They're the best. Hiller's Cash for the Holidays promotion is back, and they're giving away cash for the holidays with select purchases. Get a $500 Visa gift card when you buy select new HVAC systems or a new whole home generator, or get a $250 Visa gift card when you buy a new tankless water heater. These deals are only available until the end of the year, so schedule today by visiting happyhiller.com. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today. I'd like to celebrate a back-to-back Jared versus Joe championship. And I love reading the text line. Alex from Nashville is getting into it with Joe, saying Jared is destroying Joe again. This is ugly. Caroline needs to call the fight. Let's go. Jared destroyed Joe's once again. Joe says, I'm laughing at you. And Alex says, Jared owns you, Joe. A win for Jared is a win for America. Get over it. Love that. Another texter says, hold that L, Joe. To which Joe said, poor little baby has to cry into his phone. Goo, goo, gaga. Man, Joe's getting mad at the people on the text line. One texter says, Joe, how could someone in that building that eat and breathes football not know PT sucked, but Jared could yell about it every day? Joe says, look up broken clock, correct twice a day, start there. But Joe is salty for, again, another Jared versus Joe championship, which I'd like to thank all of you for your support. Predators game days next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game. Predators Game Day presented by TJ Anderson of TJ Anderson Homes and Benchmark Realty, online at tjandersonhomes.com. TJ Anderson, that's my realtor. Get your house seen, heard, and sold with TJ. Tonight, the Predators at 9 o'clock take on the Seattle Kraken. Game will be on TNT for people that actually have cable. That's right, TNT tonight. Of course, will be right here on 102.5 The Game. The Predators come in at 6-10-3, good for 15 points. Ugh. Seattle is 9-9-1. That's good for 19 points. And I'll just say this. They got to win. They need like a 4-game winning streak. And they did win the other night at Vancouver, so maybe that's a start. Preds Insiders is next. Stillman and Company. We'll see everybody tomorrow at 2.